Welcome to the 10th episode of the Interdimensional Gummy Bear podcast. Inspiring, compassionate, community servant, spiritual leader. These are all just a few words to describe today's guest, Dr. Kiono Barnes. Dr. Barnes earned a Doctor of Medical Dentistry degree at the University of Florida College of Dentistry and is the founder of Dental Concepts, located in Biloxi, Mississippi. He is also the owner of Pura, where they serve deliciously healthy, natural juices and smoothies. We are honored to have Dr. Barnes on the show as we explore the themes of community, restoration, trauma, faith, and personal growth. Enjoy the show.
Dr. Philip Barnes in the house.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Dr. Kiono.
Oh, Philip is his dad.
That's right.
That's how you got to start off.
Good. Hey, it's all good. It's a couple of us, my brother.
Hey, first 3 seconds.
Come on.
We got to catch your attention.
It's all good. Hey, we got him.
Maybe that was just a hook.
Watch for the hook.
That's right.
Yeah, Dr. Rolando, my sister, Dr. Valerie Barnes.
You got so many.
Man, it's kind of crazy. Yeah, my son's in dental school now. So I thank God just for sharing the information, just kind of because it sets a tone. You know,
Right.
when dad's a doctor, it wasn't more so like, hey, I'm doing this. It says, hey,
Set a
come.
standard.
Yeah, he says, like, come do rounds with me at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
We go do rounds and we start to see it, and you see how the body works,
Mm-hmm.
and you see where people kind of need people.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you want to have that understanding. So when you're in that situation,
Yeah.
right, you know, we all need each other. And I just think that it's just beautiful to be able to pass that down.
You could tell that your parents really just take pride in y'all being just professionals and educated and emotionally mature. Like all of y'all seem to have that quality.
Man, I think life teaches you that.
Yeah.
Right? Until you walk through something, you don't have the maturity to understand situations. So every little thing that comes hurts. When you walk through something that hurts a little bit, you kind of say, okay, I can deal. I just gotta figure out how I'm gonna deal with this better next time. Or,
Sure.
you know, I can understand. We have our highs, we have our lows, and we have to be able to just go with that and recognize that regardless of what we're walking through, God's got us. We're here for a reason. We're not just doing it. You know, we're not just out here throwing into it. If we're thrown in the water, we're going to be able to swim it.
Sure.
You know, we're not thrown here to drown.
Sure.
So,
All right.
yeah.
Well, tell me about the man a little bit. Tell our listeners about the man.
Yeah.
Kiono.
Yes, sir. I grew up in D'Iberville. I was born in Michigan, Lansing, Michigan. And when I was about 2, my dad, he was matriculating and finishing up med school, so he moved here. And it kind of was weird because they grew up in the North. They was always New York and that kind of thing. So to come in the South, it was kind of like, why are you going down there where nobody is and that kind of thing. But I think he saw opportunity here, an ability to raise a family in an area that would allow that, not to get caught with too many distractions. So we grew up here. I went to D'Iberville to about middle school. I wanted a little more diversity, so I went to Biloxi High School. It just seemed like they had some different programs, some different things. And then less distractions on from my perspective where I could kind of more so focus on school. So I knew I wanted to go. I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go. I ended up going to FAMU. FAMU was great because I met my wife there. You know, I was going there just to go have a good time, honestly. You know, I wanted to be educated, but I didn't realize when I went there how good of a school it was. It was a great school. I had a great, diverse teaching staff. They showed us a lot of good things. From there, I was able to matriculate at the University of Florida, where we did dental school. I did dental school there. Me and my young family at that time, I had a young son. So life got real quick.
Real quick.
I went from playing around to being serious about life.
Sure.
And I had some challenges in between, so I recognized that in the midst of it, it's not always going to be easy, but if I work, it's going to be worth it. And it's not going to be what I think it is. There's so many times I thought something was going to be one way,
Right.
and it was a whole different way. And I recognized, you know, I went from living at the frat house and life was just like whatever to getting a job and working most of the night and then studying for the rest of the night. But having a child in school, I think it made me more driven. So I was driven. He was dependent on me. If I didn't do this right, then I didn't know what my next, and I had to do this
it's
just so
you.
right.
Yeah.
So I had to make sure that he was going to be able to have a future in something and be able to know that we can kind of get this done. And by the time I didn't want him to be too old, and I'm still trying to figure my life out. So with that situation, was able to do that. You know, it was a blessing to go to University of Florida, as at first I thought I wasn't going to go there. That's a crazy story in itself. I took the DAT, and in taking it the first time, I didn't do as well as I wanted to. And so I'm interviewing at all these colleges, and I got interviewed at LSU, I interviewed at Medical University of South Carolina, I interviewed at Meharry, And, everybody except Harry was saying, well, we want you to retake the DAT. Harry was saying, well, you're good. You come. But I didn't want to pay $40,000 a year to go to a school where I can go to University of Florida that I'm already a resident and pay $6,000. So I'm thinking like, let me do, but I just really didn't want to retake that test. That test was like, man, that test was, it was serious, but that's what you have to do in life. You have to think that I'll just walk through this. I can do better.
I actually took that test.
You did? You took that? So you know what I'm talking about.
Because that was actually my all through until I took the test and until it started becoming real and I really had to figure out what the next move was for grad school. But yeah, I was on that route, and I took the DAT, and then I met with the staff and admin up there. I was really trying to get in at University of Mississippi.
Gotcha. UMC is a great school.
Yeah, I toured the school, and I spent a little time up there, and then I started observing at different places because I wanted to be orthodontist.
Right.
That's just the goal I set when I was like 10 or whenever I got braces, and I was like, oh, this is cool. All right, this is what I'm going to do. It seems like this is fun, But then figuring you had to be a dentist first, and then really looking at the reality of that and just my personality and because you really have to be detailed.
That's the thing. And so going to LSU, they have this chalk test. You have to carve this piece of chalk to these dimensions that they say. And I should have known better. Dr. Buddy was my dentist growing up, and they love him at LSU. He's like a legend at LSU. So I should have talked to him about what should I expect in the interview, but of course I'm just like, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna, I'll just be me and work it out. But that didn't really work out that way, and I destroyed this piece of chalk where everybody else did great. Mine's looking like, what is that, right? Because I wasn't a natural artist, and they pull me and they say, hey, we want you. We think that you can learn artistry, and I didn't realize that. But they think you can learn that.
It's a skill.
Right? It's a skill, and you do it every day, and you kind of get better. And so, on that contingency, they just said, we just want to see you have a better DAT score. And in the end, I had to just buckle down, right? Because the first time I took it, I was studying by book, but I had to take it on the computer. So when I got to the computer, I ran out of time, right? So I had to learn how to, swallow my pride, buckle down, retake this test, get the grade that's necessary, right? It's not necessarily that sometimes you can't pass it. It's you're studying the wrong material.
Yeah.
I was doing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
So once I learned how to do it the right way, I got the grade I needed. Right. And then all those schools let me in, right? And then I kind of committed to South Carolina because I was thinking like, well, I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere, but they kind of were giving me the most opportunity at the time. But then when University of Florida came through, it was an hour away from Tallahassee. So I'm thinking, I guess this is, this is where I'm going to be at. This is what it's meant to be. But sometimes the point is you think you're supposed to be one place. You work hard for that. You set your heart on that. And then, you get a curveball thrown and God says, your path is this way. You can fight God all you want to. You're going to be sitting there just frustrated, running circles and upset all the time. Or you can go with,
that's right.
You can walk the path set for you and see those beautiful things that he has for you. And so walked that path, went to University of Florida. I had a great time there. Met some great people, and I just feel like the education there was they taught me so much. They allowed me to go in with surgery clinic, and I was already kind of naturally, that kind of like was an easy thing for me, but it really allowed me to develop that a lot more. So I was able to do more complex situations, but also on the aesthetic side. So I were able to kind of do crown and bridge a lot nicer, and so I had a better understanding of that, and it helped me develop my artistry to where I can make that thing look like it's supposed to look, just free-handed. And I love doing that stuff now, but that wasn't a natural thing. So after that, I did a residency, general practice residency at the VA. And it's funny because I wanted to do it in Gainesville, but I didn't get that one. And that's the only one. I'm kind of that guy that applies to one, I only applied to FAMU, I can only do that right, So I did that, and that was the only one. So I kind of was lost, and I'm thinking, I'm going to graduate, and I don't have anywhere to go. Like, I need to really get this under control. It's good to have options. So it just happened that one opened up in New Orleans, but the job was in Biloxi, the Biloxi VA. And so I applied and got that one. And it brought me back home. And I'd always said, I'm not going back to Biloxi, right? I like it in Florida. I'm not going back. And so I came back, and I was trained by a wonderful doctor, Dr. Murray Keller, and he was this amazing hospital dentist at the VA. We would go to the OR every Wednesday. We do surgery, and just big surgeries in the OR, the anesthesiology rotations, and just a lot of that just doubled down and secured my my love for just the body and just kind of surgery. And unfortunately, a couple years later, he passed, but I had that time in that time frame, that small window. You never know your window. I had that window to learn with him and be taught by him, and it grew me amazingly, and I loved that. So I did that for a year. I was going to get out and work with a doctor in St. Martin, and then Katrina hit, so I couldn't work with this doctor in St. Martin. But there was a situation in Atlanta that opened up at a place called Coast Dental. It's a chain of kind of offices. And so as a young guy, I was working in Atlanta, but just right after Katrina, things started coming back. My father says, hey, I have this area in Biloxi, I want you to come back. And so I came back, worked on base for a little while, and I got to do that, still work with Dr. Keller to a degree.
You already had kind of military.
That's right. I had, because working with the VA, I had that, and then I had an understanding because I had a relationship with some of those guys. So it was good to kind of see those guys. But a lot of the guys that were captains, because you come out as a dentist and you go into the military, you're a captain. And a lot of those young captains I was working with, that's right, you're an officer, right? But the beautiful thing about working at Keesler is Keesler, they teach you. Like every Wednesday, instead of going to OR, now we're doing like these classes that are above dental school. So you think you learned everything in dental school, you just scratched the surface. Okay, they're
that's the
starting
same
to show
with these
you.
guys when they get out.
Right. So they start showing you now, instead of just making like little teeth, we're having to sculpt whole teeth out of amalgam, because they'll do Malcor restorations instead of crowns.
Right.
You got to be fit to fight. You can't just go into this situation with something temporary. It has to be something permanent.
And I'm sure material science is evolving. You got to really, things are changing. Even things that used to be considered safe or maybe be found to be toxic. And if you're not right there watching, then you might be a little behind.
Absolutely. Hey, absolutely. You really have to be paying attention. That's a whole Pandora's box right there. Because, it was amalgam, and everybody's worried about the mercury in amalgam, but they're not thinking about the BPAs and plastics. Right? So everybody wants white fillings, but what's going to wear more, a metal filling or plastic filling? You bite down, you grind on it, what's going to release more of a toxin? Something that is plastic or something that's metal. And so they don't consider that. They'll take all their metal fillings out and they'll put a plastic filling in, but then they're exposed to those plastic chemicals. You watch Aaron Brockovich, you recognize how big of a deal that is. So you really have to be on it. There's one company right now, Voco, they make a composite called Admira Fusion, and that is a biologic-based composite, but they're the only one, and because they're such a small company, they're the only one. Most people want things that are easy, that they can have easy access to, and everybody's not getting the Voco composite. Right. You have to recognize, and that's what you were talking about, recognize the toxicity of what you're doing, because I think at this point in time, we're held by God, the higher power, to when we know better, we do things better.
Yeah.
We don't just do it because it's easy. I was taught this way, I'm just going to do it right. Like the guys that were doing some of the stuff with Hitler, it's like, they were just doing their job. Well, they're just as culpable as he is.
That's right.
You have to sometimes stand against just doing your job and do what's right for people.
You're a sovereign creature.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you
at
have
night,
to
you gotta go home
be
and sleep.
whole, or else you're living somebody else's vision.
That's right. That's right.
Another man's vision.
That's right. And you're created for a purpose. And that purpose is going to have something to do with other people. How do you protect other people when you have the power to do so, but you're afraid to do that because you don't want to swim upstream, or you don't want to go against what the norm is? Sometimes we're created just for that moment to go against the norm.
What in the dental profession would you say you do that in? Because I think there's places I do that in my field professionally where I'm definitely conscious that I'm bucking the system or whatever, and people have their own perspectives whenever you're kind of trying to stay in a place of looking forward instead of getting so caught up of being proud of who you were.
Absolutely.
And I think that's abnormal, but I do think that even in small towns like this, guys like us, people don't really realize the sacrifice you have to make.
Absolutely.
To leave the safety of what and start over somewhere that you've never been. You have no connections, no people.
That's right.
No roots, and you have to reclaim an identity of some sort, right?
That's right.
That's typically where we really start to make mistakes.
That's right.
It's as we build personas to try to cope with our environment, and when we're young, that's I think even a part of what is necessary. And
Absolutely.
And now hearing you talk about bringing your daughter to the schools and just having to visualize and really feel all those emotions of what she's about to experience and comparing that to what you experience.
Absolutely, man. And just making her understand that you may have a plan, but God orders your steps. You have to be willing to follow. You pray to him, and it's not going, maybe he's trying to show you something else. You know, and in that field, like what you're talking about, you know, these guys, they come by, they give me free toothpaste. You know, they give you, but you got to pay attention to what's in this stuff these days. You know, we're talking about this. If sodium saccharin is in your toothpaste, in all the major toothpaste, why are they microdosing that in your toothpaste, but they took it out of Sweet and Low when it was on in your sweet tea? When you had unsweet tea and you had to put that pink packet in there and they took it away and then they put it in all your toothpaste. We have to be conscious, and I think that, you know, we're held to a higher standard because we're the ones that people are trusting.
That's right.
And I think that I don't think we're created to make money and pay bills.
That's right.
To get things. I think we're created to affect people.
Would you say, you said conscious, and I like to use the word just simply awareness.
Absolutely.
Like higher, like there's a way to develop an awareness that's always present.
Right.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. And
But-
I think it's
and you
not
said it-
fear. And it's not fear. It's
spiritual.
That's right.
It's love,
And trusting,
though. And
right.
it's the observer, because in a sense, the way I look at when we're interfacing with the most divine part of us, it's an observer.
That's right.
It's observing the person talking as well as the bigger thing. But it's the thing that sits behind judgment, your own judgment, right? And it's just like, that's interesting, you know?
Right. Recognize, and see, that's the thing. You're a lifelong learner too. So I know you recognize that. You're always looking for, what do the studies say?
Right.
What's really coming out? You know, paying attention now. What are the PFAs and the PFOs? What chemicals are these in? The nanoplastic to microplastics. So should I just fear that and just not eat or drink anything?
Right.
You know, not breathe the air? No, I have to be conscious, because when I go to the store, there's 20 products I can pick. So I have to pick the one that's least toxic. Same thing. If I'm gonna put something in somebody's mouth, if I'm not gonna put it in my own mouth, I'm not gonna put it in your mouth.
Do you think being an authority in the healthcare field is a part of what helped you find that drive?
You want to be, you know, honestly, I look at myself as a person under God, one part of a body, right? Everybody has a part. My part is no bigger than anybody else's, but it's my responsibility, because of where I am, to try to inform people, not create fear, not stoke fear, but to inform them of what's safe and what's not, and what may be more linked to things that may affect them later on in life, and give them the safest, most effective route in their functionality. I'm gonna put something in there, it needs to last.
Yeah,
but it
and
also
know what
needs
you're
to be safe.
compromising if you choose whatever.
Exactly.
You know.
But the thing is one day when I get done with this stint on life, I'm gonna have to talk to God about all the decisions I made. And what really holds me in the end, as far as why I make those decisions, is when I talk to him, I want to be able to tell him I did the best I could, and I really did do the best I could.
I don't think you'll have to tell him anything.
I think he's gonna know. I think you're right.
Yeah.
You know, but I want him to see my heart and know it wasn't based upon how much money I can make, or how I could mislead somebody.
Yeah.
I want him to know I was really out here just trying to help love people in the way that I could.
That's right.
Give them the best thing, just like I would want to treat my mother and and that's what they tell you. You know, you got, when we're at school, you know, they tell you that. It doesn't always stick to everybody, though. You know, they say, hey, these are people. Just like you. They're not teeth. They're not dirty people. They're people, right? And so if you're going to take care of them, really take care of them. And I watched my father do that all the time, which was great for me to go and make rounds with him. I just didn't want 4 o'clock in the morning calls like he got.
Right.
He still gets those. I don't know how he answers those calls and goes back to sleep. You know, I can give somebody some antibiotics and get back with him. He right, they're having a heart attack. He has to go right now.
He's conditioned, and his heart and his thoughts and his intentions are actually always with his patients.
Absolutely.
That's a true doctor, and you could see it when I was at I did stint working little bits at the hospital, a little bit short-term acute care, a little bit. I did a little bit of home health, because I always knew outpatient was going to be my place, and that's where I started. But in between leaving that first place that I really dug in and got all my experience, about 2.5 years was about, I was like, okay, I'm ready.
Right.
Like I learned what I need to. I've done well. Like I've doubled the census of this practice, and I've had to interview people, and I've had to understand business metrics, basics at least. I didn't know what I had to,
but you learned from making mistakes.
You gotta know enough to be dangerous, and then just be willing to just be in a state of. That's why for me, I was like, since I didn't go to business school, it would almost help me because I knew I didn't know nothing. I don't know anything.
Right. But see, that's the humbleness in you.
Right.
You have to have humility.
Yeah.
Thinking you know everything. When you get humbled, it's a whole different thing.
Right. So I'm always paying attention for the opportunity to learn because that's the thing that I didn't formally learn,
Right.
But you see it just like with your dental practice. Really, if I look at what value I got from professional school more than anything, it's just to solve problems.
That's right.
At the end of the day, it's to break down a problem, to scrutinize evidence, to determine the whole scope of the problem, and that's where a lot of doctors fall short because they're following protocols and standards of care, but and they don't trust their own practice and intuition, and they don't trust. But the only way you could build that trust is by really caring and diving in, asking extra questions, wondering, ponder, asking in the history and see how things possibly could be a pattern.
Absolutely, man. I mean, you have to be able to apply it. You first apply it to yourself. That's the beauty about us having a body. I mean, we're taught a skill, right? And then we have to trust that if we're going to really care for them, this was me, how many different ways could I solve this problem? And what's going to be
the most efficient path?
That's right.
Yeah.
For this particular situation, and for some people, it's going to be completely different because, they, like with the soldiers, they got to be fit to fight. Yeah. So what can I do that I know is going to be functional, but when they get back, maybe they can get something that's going to be a little bit more, consistent
long-term.
when they're not in this situation.
Yeah.
So, but you have to be willing to step out. And that's the thing. You have to be willing to trust that if God put this in you and he put you in this place to be able to have this power to do this, that you're going to do the right thing.
That's right.
There's a lot that maybe mishandle it because their intentions are wrong.
Right.
Right. But if your intentions are pure and you're doing the right thing, God will always see to it that you're taking
pure
care of.
intentions, dude. I love that. That's so funny because like the language, we talked about the word earlier, but just like you said, pure intentions and basic consciousness or awareness it's kind of that simple, isn't it?
Man, it's so simple. It sounds complex,
really
but
not.
it's so simple.
It's the practice of seeking that, right?
That's right.
And you're not, like they say, you're not really defined by your works, but your works are what's driving you into your purpose, right?
Right.
And so like when you have like clear intentions on your work, because at first your intentions are when you're young and you're accumulating student loan debt and you got a young family, I got bills to pay.
It's always money at first, right?
I got bills to pay.
That's
First
right.
and foremost, until we're not safe. I'm not doing my job as the man
if I can't protect my family.
Until then.
That's right.
And so you don't even have the capacity to think about your discipleship and in the purpose in the deeper, more significant way until you at least get the bills paid with a little extra to where if something happens, we're not in trouble.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden your mind unlocks.
Right.
And
but culture teaches us chase the money. That's all you hear all the time, money. But people are bigger than that.
It's a threshold. There's a fine line of diminishing returns,
that's right.
And are you willing to compromise with this?
Are you willing to do it? But the thing is this, when you get in and you see somebody happy because either you gave them back their confidence or you took away that pain or you made them feel whole again to a degree because you're just a conduit.
Right.
It's not you doing it, right?
Funnel.
We can plant the seed and water it and put sun on it, but God makes it grow. And God's always going to make your situation grow when your intentions are pure, or else you're going to keep coming back to the selfishness of self-destruction and intrusive thoughts will win. And it's always I'm not enough because you're being measured. You're measured up with people. You're never enough. But when you're measured up with what God has you doing, He's always going to make sure you're enough. So when you start to do that, and you see people turn around and they make that step because you're helping just to kind of nudge them along a little bit by giving them health, giving them opportunity, creating confidence, and that thing doesn't hurt anymore. It's kept me up for, 2 nights, and it's not going to keep me up tonight. When it's something where my tooth has been broken in the front, and every time I smile, so I smile like this, now I can smile, right? You give them back that confidence. You create something, and that makes you feel like I am doing what humans are supposed to do.
That's right.
We're building people, right?
When you say
Sorry.
you get to the point of where you're actually starting to make money, you see that bank balance going up. Is it easy to lose sight of that when you start accumulating money?
So the thing is that's the biggest thing. Depends on how long you've been broke.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. When you're coming up as a I had a baby in dental school in the last years of college, and me and my wife, everything was just struggling to try to make ends meet. So when you see that, you get that first 6-figure job in Atlanta. It's like at first you don't really know what to do. You're doing too much. I was doing too much. I'm not gonna lie. I was
wasting energy.
It was wasting, too much money on dumb stuff. Okay, I would go get a Sears card and go get a TV that I didn't know would be obsolete in 3 or 4 years, right? And a sound system, and I'm creating more bills when really I just should have been creating some kind of way to generate wealth in a way where investing
Collecting
or something
assets.
that would collecting assets. But instead, I'm doing something that feels good for the moment. We like the flesh. We like to feel good for the moment, but we don't always think long term. And I think that's the thing. Once you fall down, and even though you're making that money, you mishandled it, okay, and you recognize I can remake that money and do better with it. I think that's sometimes we need that because we don't all have that financial literacy. Some of us, our parents put that into us.
Well, the thing is, it's currency, and that means it flows, just like a river current. Current flows, right? So
absolutely.
When we think of money in such a fixed way, and a lot of it when we don't know better and we're setting our goals, and you have kind of like benchmarks, like that's how you probably run your business and practice is all. You're probably always trying to benchmark things just because that's what we do to move forward.
Standards to be able to continue to be in practice, right?
Almost objectify subjective things even sometimes. You got to find ways to measure what you do,
right?
But when you could even say doctors on the outside, almost in a way, some people look at this and say, you're not a real doctor. And they do the same thing to me all the time. And it's hilarious. And I don't, and you don't introduce yourself as doctor. People do, right?
Right.
It's the same as me, right? But also it's part of the nature of the label that can let people understand that you're not a slouch when you're talking.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Yeah, because they respect that. You're absolutely right. They respect that. But that does not, I don't think our titles define us.
No.
It is not, I do, therefore I am. I think it's I am, therefore I do.
That's right.
God created us for a certain purpose, and once we can actually start to apply our purpose, we recognize just how many things that we can do, but then it's not for our glory. It has to be for His. How can we affect people in a positive way, and then also allow them to affect us? We have to be lifelong learners. That's why I respect that so much, because they think they know it all.
Is it easier to live that way and to drive your life into that purpose and have the confidence to do that as a fringe doctor like us versus if you were that almost in a sense where the society sees you as, the MD.
That's right.
In a way, it's kind of like the kid that gets called smart when they're young and they find that they actually aren't the smartest ones when they graduate because other kids learn to work harder.
That's right.
And they learn to think different, be creative. And also the dyslexic kids that are found out at 8 years old are better, and they start getting the appropriate training. Those are the CEOs of the future.
That's right.
The ADD kids are the winners, actually.
Yeah, but you're talking about character versus talent. The ones that supposedly have all this talent, they don't think they have to work. But character beats talent all the time.
Every day.
Every day.
And you got to work on it, too.
You got to work. You have to constantly work. You're never at that spot. We're always on the way. But we're not where we used to be. We may not be where we want to be, but we're not where we used to be either. So we're always in this period of flux where we're trying to become closer. And then what I recognize now, just as I've gotten older, is I'm trying to become closer spiritually to God. So as I'm doing that, if I'm doing something, I have to ask myself, who does it glorify? Does it glorify me? Does it glorify Him?
Right.
Is this situation? And then, because anything that glorifies Him is going to involve loving other people in some kind of way.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
At which point in your practice would you say you noticed it turning into a discipleship versus what it was prior, the means to make the ends, and then all of a sudden, like I said, there's that shift where things are safe. Bills are paid, kids are safe.
That's right.
There's money in the bank. All right. So for me, at least, that's where I also proved to myself that I really didn't care about money.
Right.
Because I really stopped caring, and because I just was like, all right, Everything's moving the way it should. Now I can disconnect my brain from that because I really don't care. But the reason I did because it was a problem.
That's super, no, but that's super powerful because you're absolutely right. Because there's a point where, okay, I got to have this many slots set up with this type of production so that I can pay the bills to be able to give the best. If I want to have the best type of products I'm putting in people's mouths, I got to be able to afford to put it in their mouths, right? I can buy the cheap stuff and then charge more for it, but I don't want to be that person. Not because, it may be a problem. It might be okay, but is it more toxic? And one day when I talk to God, is he going to be disappointed in that? I have to do what's best. I'm not going to put it in my own, but then you recognize in the midst of all this time, right? Because it's time in my situation, it's gonna be, we fill those blocks, and it's like a lot of these practices, how many people can we get in a specific time frame? Well, I'm running over all the time because I get in there and I talk to people, and when they start saying, hey, I'm having this, I'm gonna have you considered this. Basically, I'm having this problem in the world, have you considered Jesus? I'm having this problem in this situation, have you considered what Jesus says about that situation? Have you considered what he's saying you? Because it's never to where I have to introduce something. They already know, they're just not listening.
Yeah, you're just exposing them to something a truth that is already within us.
Yeah, he's been pressing down on them. And it's always that, well, I have this and I have this, but I know this is probably what I should be, but I keep pushing it. Well, you're fighting against it. You're always going to be frustrated in a situation. And it's really divine because in the midst of those conversations, I'm also speaking to myself a lot.
Right.
I'm speaking to an old version of myself and how I used to think I can do this and I can do that. I can do nothing without him showing me the way.
Right. That's right. And I'll shout that from the rooftops, and every opportunity you get is a moment. And you realize too, it's the grocery store person you run into, even when you have that day where you're like, man, I need to get in and get out. And then you bump into that one person and you're like, that might be the conversation that if you miss it, it may, like you said, it might not come back. And some people don't realize that, and they see people like me and you, and they say, oh, they just like hearing their own voice. Like, no, that's not it at all.
Right. They're not getting it until you see how you affect that person, and you really see it when you see what they're doing.
That's right.
Because those people will start to grow, and they'll start to affect other people because they're starting to get it. They're starting to open that door, allow God to come in, and they have that confidence to go out where they're now not being judged by people.
That's right.
But they're held under what God has put purpose in their life to do.
Right.
When you recognize what's going on there, that's a whole different way that you're living.
Right.
So yes, I just trust at this point, it's not I'm chasing, trying to fill things in my practice. I mean, I trust that God will sustain. He always has. Why would he not?
That's right.
So as long as I go there pure intent, but the thing is I listen more without trying to press on somebody, it's never a judgment thing. It's not, this is what I'm doing, the way I'm doing is better than the way you're doing it, or you're doing it wrong. It's not that, because I think we're all learning all the time.
Right.
But it's just allowing God to come into our situation and show us what he's trying to show us.
Right.
Because sometimes through these situations, we're meant to learn something.
That's right.
It's always just going to be our way because we want it to be our way.
Would you say first off, when was the actual shift? Like what age?
Oh, you know what? Probably about 5 to 7 years in practice.
Right.
I started really recognizing that. And you have to recognize in dentistry, people come in anxious.
Yeah.
They come in worried. And it's not just that they're anxious about this. They start showing everything. They start showing parts of their depression, parts of their anger, parts of their frustration with life. So that anxiety is almost a spark to some of those other things. And when you really start paying attention, and I was a server, I was a bartender, I kind of did little jobs where I've always kind of dealt with people. So I'm a body language kind of person. So when I see them, it's not what they say, it's how they act, it's how they twitch, it's how they, give you that eye, it's how they kind of, it's like their grunts, and you start kind of paying attention, and you just kind of asking, hey, you good, everything, and even if it's not beyond, because I don't want to get too much into I don't want them to break down and they came in for a feeling and now we're having a therapy session, but I think they have to recognize who to give it to, because I'm just a man, right? I deal with the same things, but I may deal with it differently. I mean, I had to recognize for me, I may get my frustrations out playing basketball, but sometimes I got to bring it to God. I can't put anything over going to him first.
That's right.
And I think that was the issue. A lot of times I would go to other things, worldly things, coping mechanisms.
Do you think too, even when it comes to that, because the way I look at now, even when I'm training, like I'm thinking about as like no matter what I'm doing. It started with me doing yoga, and I realized that this was my prayer. This is as an expression, and that's really. It never really even felt like an idea. It just felt like that's what it was. It felt internally like that's what I'm doing. And a lot of the symbols, and you're constantly looking up, and you're opening your posture and your chest and your vulnerable spots that your body tends to. And even noticing, like sometimes you get these postures like where you're facing upward against gravity, and your chest and the fascia in your chest. There's like it's like
there's energy.
There's part of you in the ego and some of the control that we want to sustain.
That's right.
That's tied and resistant to.
That's right. Yeah, you have to open, and that you're absolutely right. You have to be willing to open it up, and you got to be careful of whatever pathways, because if you're opening it up by you pick up the Bible, or you pick up a bottle, it might open you up. But what are you putting in after you pick it up? You know, are you putting in something that's telling you to be like overly aggressive or overly, you know, because
what are you feeding?
What are you
feeding?
feeding?
Your ego or your spirit?
There you go.
You know?
That's right. You know, so you have to let him speak to you, which is why the word is so powerful. You know, because it's not about, you know, like Pastor Jeremy says, it's not, the Bible's not about what used to happen, but about what always happens. Right. And so,
it's exactly right.
Right.
Well, just like your business, whenever you're talking earlier, I'm like, that's actually the best way to run a business, to sustain a community health business, no matter what it is to really give a crap, to be thoughtful about the things you say, and really do not think about what's best for you financially in any way, what's truly best for that person, right? And if you do that enough, you're blessed by God, and but your heart is pure. You have energy to give and give, because it regenerates itself and compounds it, right?
Well, see, that's the thing. Seek ye first the kingdom, right? So if you seek that first, in other words, if I know it's like the Sabbath, right? Why? If you don't trust God's going to take care of you, you're always trying to do it yourself, right? So I'm going to work every day because I need the money, or God's going to provide. I'm going to work those days, and then I'm going to give him a day.
And imagine what your day-to-day mental experience is like when you trust it to him versus when you're controlling it. Imagine the time under tension, your brain's in a state trying to sort out and solve this problem that you really don't have the tools to solve.
That's right. It's so much. And that's where you need people, right? And that's where God comes in again, because he gives you people, the right people, right? Because that's the whole thing. Love God, love people. Right? And as you love those people, you're surrounded by people that they have gifts independently, and together, everybody's part of his body. You might be an eye, I'm a mouth, he's a nose, an ear, you know, and everybody works together to create this situation where we can affect positive change in the world, but also restore, because a lot of it is restoring anxious individuals that walk in there, but they need restoration, but they're afraid from this childhood trauma.
That's right.
Right? Or they're afraid from somebody that kind of did them or talked to them aggressively or said something aggressive, or it hurt too much at that time, but now they're grown, but they remember that pain. Right? Because it's not always you.
And it's
don't
stored
always,
in your body.
It is. You don't always remember what people tell you. Oh, it's going to be okay. But you remember how they made you feel. So if he hurt you and you were 4, well, I don't want to go to that dentist ever. I want to go to a dentist ever.
That's right.
Right? I don't even want to be on that side of town. Right? Because you're associating. And the only way to get that out is to disassociate, tear that down, which is what God does sometimes. He'll break us all the way down and build us back up with proper foundation. When you really have true foundation about what it should be like, you start forgetting about the traumatic experience that it was like. Well, you remember it from a point of, the point of reference, but you don't remember it as far as this is how it's going to be moving forward.
Sure. Right. And that's the whole point. It's like our brain is always trying to predict the future. That's what it's good at, actually. And not only that, but it's what we're doing subconsciously, whether we're aware of it or not.
Right.
And most people lack the awareness to really understand that and give themselves grace, because it's like if I'm thinking this or I had this thought, that's who I am. And it's like you're building this weird, you're starting to stack shame and guilt on internally, and it's not even, it may not even be anything you're doing.
That's right.
But it's just like, I feel like when you can trust in something bigger and you understand some of just what science tells us, and even neurobiology is showing us, and and everything is leading towards us understanding a deeper and deeper thing, that we are all reflections of nature.
There you go.
Nature is God. God is the creator. And we're talking a lot earlier about you just getting into like talking about evolution.
That's right.
And how we have this like partisan or this polarizing way of thinking about everything. It's got to be black or white, on or off, wrong or right. It's got to be this, because it's the zeros and ones. It's kind of like the base level of all the coding there is.
That's right. And human intuition makes us want to understand everything to the utmost. And there's some things we just have to accept the fact we're not going to understand, not in this particular form.
That's right.
Right? Now, where God has us later, spirituality, we may understand that. But the thing is now, if we understood everything, where would faith come in?
Right.
Right? So that's the whole purpose, and it has to be faith. You have to do it by the evidence of things not seen, right? You know he's there, you know he's working in your life, but you don't see that. But you can feel air, you can feel wind, you can feel God, but you have to. And that's the thing. People expect him to come and just push him over. Okay? But the thing is, if looking back, like when he was dealing with Elijah, he came in a whisper. So if God's coming in whispers and your life is so loud, you have to quiet your life down enough to be able to hear God.
And maybe too, it's not about it's the question. Sometimes it's not the answer, right?
Right.
So sometimes I feel like part of what God wants and what Jesus was trying to teach us is to think.
That's right.
That's why he spoke in parables.
That's right.
He didn't answer questions directly,
Right.
because that would be a disservice to you. And so you had to think about the parable and be like, whoa, what is that? It's like, you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is it important enough that you even ponder it in your mind, or do you keep on to this next thing that you have to do?
Right.
At what point do you stop
Are
pursuing?
you a being or a doing?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you're pursuing, this is what I want, what I want, what I want. At what point does what you want get pushed aside?
Yeah.
And what God wants takes over? Because when that happens, you're always going to be cared for. Now, you may not be where you thought you wanted to start, or that job that you thought you were going to have forever, or that city you thought you were going to live in forever, right? It may be somewhere he's got you in the middle of nowhere doing something crazy, and you pull a Jonah and you go try to run to the beach, and he gets you swallowed and still gets you where you were running from, right?
Yeah.
Because eventually it's full circle.
Yeah.
But the thing is when you really let go of just all your own selfish intentions.
And and the thing we talked about, and your brain's desire to anticipate in the future.
That's right. Based off the past, because that's all we have. And there's so many times where God will show you things that you didn't even think were possible. I think that's the thing. The thing is,
And when does he show you? When you know what? All right, get out the way.
That's right.
Go. Do
That's
it.
right.
And then all of a sudden, once you walk through that door, you're like, whoa, I had no idea this was here.
That's right. I'm gonna tell you. You know, you asked me when it really started for me. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. Transparency, full transparency. I have dreams sometimes, and I had a dream one time, and it was I'll never forget this because it was my son's 18th birthday, and that night I went to bed early because I wanted to make sure that I got up the next morning, I was refreshed, right? It had been a long weekend. And I had this dream that I was driving in the swamp, and outside in the swamp, there was you couldn't really see, but there was lions, tigers, bears, was just danger outside. And I'm like, I just kept thinking, I'm glad I got this truck. I'm so happy I'm in this truck. As I'm driving, I come to this river in front of me, and the truck can't go anymore. And I hear a voice, and it tells me, get out. I'm thinking, and like I said, I'm thinking, like, you got to be kidding me. Get out. Like, I'm not getting out. And very loud and fruitful,
It's a perfectly good
get
truck.
out. That's right. That's right. I just can't drive. I mean, I can go, but it's no going backwards. It's get out. And so I'm saying, okay, I get out, I open the door, and right there's a new path. Okay? So I walk this new path. And as I'm walking this new path, at first I was a little afraid, but I'm thinking, well, there's a new path. I didn't see this path, so maybe I'm going somewhere that I didn't think was possible. I walk this new path, and it gets to a point that everything's overgrown, and there's no new path there. And then I'm saying to myself, now, why would you have me get out the truck? It was a perfectly good truck.
Right.
And now I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I know there's danger everywhere. And he said, close your eyes. And I was like, how is that going to help? I had no understanding about, what do you mean close your eyes? I said, close your eyes. And I closed my eyes, and when I closed my eyes, there was a new path that was lit up almost in like iridescent kind of footsteps. And then as I began to follow those footsteps, I woke up.
So once you actually closed your eyes and found darkness and stop trying to see, all of a sudden you saw exactly what you needed to see.
When it wasn't on me, when I had to really release and let go, that night God showed me, if I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be, I have to let him lead.
Let him light the path.
That's right. It's not up to me. It's not, I can see all these paths and all these things. And I have so many options. I'm like, which one am I going to do? Mm-hmm. It's not my choice. And I think that's where the enemy really comes in and throws us off. He gives us so many options that everything looks like carbon copies. But if you really pay a close enough attention, you recognize there's discrepancies in there. And there's this truth, which is why the Bible has to be foundational, because there's so many things that we'll take from that and will create lies. For instance, where they say money is the root of all evil. Well, that's not what the Bible says. What he said is the love of money is a root for all kinds of evil, right? Recognize, because money, you can take money and do positive things with it. That's right. Yeah. But if you love money more than you love God, it becomes an idol.
That's right.
And that's anything in your life. It has to be him first and trust him to fill that in. But people will take that and misconstrue it all the time. So then money's evil inherently. No, that's not true. Money can be used to do some beautiful things for a lot of people. Instead of taking money and buying a super yacht, you take money and feed a country. But are you really feeding the country, or are you giving it to somebody else who just misconstrued it?
USA.
Well, just saying, it depends on what's it going through, but it can be used in a positive manner, and it can be given through something to really take care of people who otherwise don't have hope. And all of a sudden it gives hope, but that hope comes from God, who then gives you that
right.
Hey, he gives you an order to do something positive with what you have, instead of, let me be on this yacht so everybody can look at me and be like, hey, look, he got a yacht.
Right.
Because who does that serve?
And those people are miserable.
Well,
and they're seeking more. It's just like a dope addict seeking more and more. It's just like a dopamine thing, or it's like you're never find what you're looking for down that path.
That's right.
And you just keep trying, and it's like we have these lessons and things around us, but it's the dynamics of power. We were talking about this last episode, and the idea behind if you're not a strong man that's led by faith, then you don't understand what you're doing with the power that you have.
Absolutely.
And there's so many, and that's where we fail. And politically, anywhere you see leadership that hasn't solved themselves, the battle within themselves, and the recognition that they aren't in control of this thing. And those are the ones, that insecurity fuels all the negative things that you see, that the fact that they don't respect themselves and understand who they are. How possibly can I lead another person because I don't respect the influence I have?
That's right. And that's so powerful. But that is the problem with a lot of these young, immature minds that have so much power. Because who are they willing to listen to, right? And if
or they stop listening too soon.
Well,
right?
Of course, they stop. They're maybe not listening to God because they feel like they don't need God because they got the money to affect whatever they want to affect, but they're not listening to what he wants them to do with it. They got to a point, but then that they get miserable because, do they respect their friends enough to listen to them, or are they just surrounded by yes men?
Yeah.
Which is why I appreciate real people, right? Yeah, I appreciate real people.
You got to be vicious about your circle.
Yeah, you have to be because they'll have
my friends better not tell me yes. Why do I need you for?
That's right.
Anybody can do that.
Be honest with me at all times.
Tell me exactly what you think.
That's right. And speak real with me, and I'm going to speak real too, not to hurt your feelings or make you feel some kind of way, but just to jog that thought, because he's working on me too. I don't got it all together, right? But I have to let go of myself to let him put me where I'm supposed to be, because it's not my will. It's going to be, he's got a plan, and I have to be, if I'm going to be willing to follow it, first I have to be able to hear.
That's right.
After reading, I have to be able to listen. So I have to cut down life and culture enough to be able to hear what I'm supposed to be doing to affect that in a positive way, not just that I have power and I can look glorified.
That's right.
What does that do?
Right.
I mean, and it's just like an evil king versus a good king, a breath of fresh air versus somebody that just creates trauma wherever they go.
That's right.
And
it's also like the dynamics of even they're showing as far as like what testosterone's effects on men do, and they find that for instance, if you have a man that's insecure, and even if they're the guy in the gym that people look at them and think they're powerful, a lot of times those guys feel small.
Absolutely.
And they feel like incomplete. They feel that they don't like themselves, right?
You're right.
And they're like running away from it by trying to build this version of themselves. But even though the world even now sees them as such, they don't see themselves any differently. And whatever woundedness they had is still there. And, and
that's kind of like what we talked about last time. It's kind of like you can survive off of that for a while. It's allowed for a while, but what happens when your body breaks down? What happens when, you were the best fighter ever and now you're too old to do that? What happens when you were the biggest guy, won all these bodybuilding competitions, but now your age means, you tore a shoulder or, your knee gave out. You're the best basketball player ever, but you have blood clots in your leg. What happens when you have to switch up and you recognize, sure, that was a medium to get to a place, but now your situation has changed.
That's right.
And how do you take that to the next level without doing the thing you used to do? And that's where you recognize our minds are greater. Right. It's greater. This gets better.
That's right.
That, our bodies are always decaying.
And that's what probably was the first big surprise for me. It's like, because when I was younger, I was like, I'm never picking up. I got out of high school, I graduated. I was like, when I get done with college, I'm never picking up a book again.
Right.
Then I get in college, and really, I was just like, whatever, Right. But then in professional school, that's actually where I learned to study. Because before that, I was just BSing and just procrastinating and cramming and memorizing and whatever.
Right.
And then and I was like, man, I actually enjoy this stuff. Like like kinesiology, the first time I saw examples of in terms of movement, like it took once.
Right.
And it was just like, oh, that makes sense with kind of my intuition, what I was already thinking
when
anyway.
You love it. It's so easy to learn it when you love. I just love the body and how. And to me, I know they say some of these guys get so smart that they stop believing in God because they. But for me,
that
it made me believe
my faith,
right
because this is dynamic.
Who is thinking right? How you're gonna have an iron molecule that bonds oxygen on heme, and that's how you spread oxygen to the body. Who would have thought about that? When you break down and you open a cadaver and you really look at it. You're looking at the body, like just how it just blows your mind that it is this complex.
And from like an engineering perspective, it's the most efficient designs possible.
Absolutely.
Like as far as the physics of it,
right.
And you look at the principles of leverage and like in the way we're oriented in this environment with gravity and the forces at play, we're perfectly created and suited for everything.
And that's the thing, but we have to be willing to take that step. You can be completely prepared for something, but not, like you said, have enough security to take that step onto that next thing.
Right.
And even though you've been preparing and haven't been recognizing, God's been preparing you the whole time for that next step, but you don't believe in yourself enough. Sometimes you got to close your eyes and let him speak to you and take that step where you don't think there's a path, just like on Indiana Jones, where he steps into the invisible, right?
It's
because he can't see it.
It's the hero's journey, and every man must take it.
That's right.
There's
Faith
no
is necessary.
shortcuts.
That's right.
You must,
That's right.
and you got to do
Have
it
to.
alone.
Have to. That's right. And if you don't, then you sit there and you
You're still a
doubt.
boy.
You say, that's it. And you doubt all day and you sit in that corner and you cower from everything that comes by. And you may look big and you may be scared of some things off, but after a while, when your body breaks down, now you feel like it's not worth it. But your life has value at all times. You have to find out why. Your purpose is there. There's so many negative things, intrusive thoughts in people's minds that walk around here and they doubt themselves all day, either because that past thing was meant to teach you, though. It wasn't meant to be like this, right? Every day you go to math class, right? You work out problems, right? You work out problems. How do you become a mathematician? By working out problems. Then you have a test, right? Then you have a test, and that's a different math class day because all it is everything that you learn, but it's problem. And then once you work that out, now you can start to say, okay, I'm a mathematician, but then when you're a mathematician, what do they bring? They bring a more serious problem to you.
That's right.
How is life different?
Never different.
All day we're walking through things. We have to make decisions.
And we have to embrace the problems or the blessings.
That's it.
And the
It
only times
prepares
that
us.
I was had positive changes in my life was 100% of the time after I was humbled by something that it's like God put me on my knees plenty of times.
Right.
Like, because I was too stupid and arrogant and ignorant to know that's what I needed to do in certain moments. And it's like there were certain times where I almost felt like his fingers on my head and just went like beep. It's like you just put me on my knees, and I was just
hey, okay, I'm here.
But most of it was like out of like agony and emotional pain, and like literally falling on my knees just out of just like
absolutely.
And then realizing I'm there,
right?
And just saying like this is where I'm at now.
Right?
How did I get here? And what do I do to not end back up here?
Right, because you don't want to be there again. But sometimes you have to. It's like going to the gym. You want muscles, you got to work out.
That's right.
Right, and so sometimes it's the same workouts.
That's right.
But in life, you don't really want to work out the same stuff, right? Because you've gone through that. I'm ready for higher kind of things, but there's going to be more kind of issues that go with that, and you have to be recognized that, hey, I'm prepared for this.
Yeah.
Not that, hey, it's a problem, let me run from it. You can't run. Right. You have to face first, deal with it. I am already fighting from a place of victory. Okay, God with me. If I'm hearing Him right, I'm reading His word, I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to do to follow. I'm praying. He's put me in these situations so that I can work it out, and maybe when somebody's coming behind me, I can help them work it out.
Right.
Help them kind of see. But their journey may be different. But sometimes we face some of the same things. We can't look at the negative downtimes. Do you think it's sometimes,
or do you think that's? Do you think, and that's kind of the question I want to get before you get too deep. Do you think that it's every human has to go through their own internalized experience emotionally to fully grasp and understand what they need to know to move through the steps of growth and enlightenment, let's say? And do you think that potentially all of our experiences are actually way more the same than we realize, in a sense? Like that we are all actually going through a very similar emotional experience, but we're responding and reacting to the things that are happening much differently.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest with you, because where we start may be different. Some from a single parent household, from two parents, so how you were taught to deal with it, but then that's where it comes into we're dealing with some of the same stuff, but we're responding differently because how we were taught. And a lot of times how we're taught isn't like mom said, do it this way. It's you watched her do that.
Right.
You watched her walk through it. You watched your dad walk through it. You watched him either break down or pick himself up and say, I'm going to get a second job, or I'm going to start spending as much money, or we're going to do something different, right? Or you just...
Or how many of the things that he told you should do a certain way when you were a kid and you were like, whatever, I know better. I'm going to do it my way.
That's right.
You did it, whatever.
Right.
And then you might have been resisting that a lot, and to the point, and that's why they always say, like, at a certain point, your parents get real stupid, and then all of a sudden they become geniuses again.
That's right.
And it's usually like when you're in you're hitting adolescence, like 25, 26,
right.
like where that frontal lobe kind of kicks in gear.
It's like, whoa. This is what they've been telling me this the whole time.
I could have avoided a lot of problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But some of us are built to be, we have a different amount of endurance. Some of us can't handle that endurance just physically. You may have a seizure from too much stress, so you really have to watch what you're putting on yourself. That's right. Your sensitivities are different, but then you may be able to handle something completely else that somebody else can't handle. So, which is why we all need each other, and we have to feed each other with these situations. But yes, I think it's a little bit of this, because there are benchmarks that you hit as a person when you're walking through certain struggle, but some of us struggle different. You're born a rich kid. You're not really going to recognize what it's like to kind of get the lights cut off and what you're going to do in that situation until your check hits the Friday.
That's right.
But you may walk through other things because it's just maybe exponentially different, where your jet ran out of fuel or something.
Yeah.
I can't relate to that. I don't know, but I'm just saying.
Is it possible for the rich kid to fully understand kind of the wisdom and some of what we're talking about without touching the stove to know it's hot?
See, that's the thing. I think sometimes you got to know it's hot. It has to burn you sometimes. But I think,
because I've always been the type, not only do I have to touch it, like I feel like sometimes I had to touch it 2 or 3 times, and then to the point where like I caused a little bit of a problem instead of just what I would consider the same energy that I feel like I'm working on and continue to, like, I'm committed to turning into grit, into perseverance and things of that nature.
Right.
But also efficiently.
Right.
But that was stubbornness when I was younger and just pride, really.
That's right.
And but it was the balance of, like, you think of pride could be good or bad. You know, you could have pride in certain things or pride in others, but
it depends on what it teaches you in that pride, how it works out of you, and recognizing that we're just people in here, right? And we're no greater.
You have to be able to look at yourself and reflect on yourself just as strongly as you can the people you're looking outside of yourself. Right.
And sometimes getting that burn and then feeling it throughout the week, even though you didn't get burned again, you still feel where you are burned. You know, you take that shower and it hurts. You're like, okay, this is supposed to feel good, and it hurts. You know, you think, okay, I don't want to do that again. You remember working out some of our selfish tendencies, our pride, our ego, recognizing where we stand under God, I think it's a process that's different for everybody. Some people, they got to fall once. I know I'm a little more hard-headed. I got to bump my head because I like to be determined. I'm going to get it done. This is going to happen. I don't care how long it takes. You know, and then sometimes I'm barking up the wrong tree. And so now I have to listen first. Let me get the plan first before I just go chasing something that may not, I think, because it looks all nice and shiny, but is the inside of the cup dirty?
That's right.
Right? Does it just look that way? Because I want the things that are clean in and out. I don't want just the outside to be shiny, and then when I get this thing, it's like now it's like, you know, you get this nice car, and then you're paying this ridiculous car note, and it's like, why do I need this?
Now you're thinking, you don't got space in your look. It ain't. Not only are you paying the rent, it's got space in your head rent free too, because you're like, is somebody gonna hit it while I'm in the store?
No, it's too much.
You know,
I heard that. You know, guys talking about, you know, the thing about having $1 million in the bank is you always have to think you got to keep that $1 million in the bank. So you're always thinking about money, but then at what point does money become an idol? You know, at what point do we let it all go? And we recognize we're existing for a reason. The most beautiful things are the things that don't involve. You walk outside, the air, the birds, the trees. If you can just appreciate that, you appreciate life.
Just being present in a moment.
Yeah, but if you're waking up, checking your bank account, looking at who's doing what might happen. It's too much. And then to go and then deal with your other stuff and what your daughter's dealing with, your son's doing, all it has to be prospectively. We get this life. We get to live this life. We get another day to correct whatever we did wrong the day before.
Sure. And I think even a person, because the personas are a mask to protect you against a harsh world and people that can say mean things and hierarchies that aren't really fair in corporate structures and people's life.
That's right.
And it's the reality of a lot of people's lives. But for me, I feel like, because I'm trying, especially talking to you, it's having me really consider the listeners that might be young men that are still really, they have a lot of steps, because we take for granted, like we've been through some stuff now, you know.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, professionally 15 years.
That's right.
15
years. Opened 2007, so this about to be almost 20. So
20 years.
Going in, but
see, I just passed the 10-year mark.
Is that right?
Yeah, so you got a little time on me there, but you're just ahead of me, which is great.
Well, that's all right. I mean, what you're doing with your time is beautiful, though. You know, and then I love how you do it, where you're trying to get away from traditional. Let me just throw in, because part of, being part of the medical community, we recognize, let me just throw meds at it, make you comfortable for the moment, treat the symptoms, but never treat the problem.
Right.
You know, I think that is, and then it feeds into later on when it's something else and you're back in that situation, and it trains your mind, it hardwires you to always think instant gratification, treat that, and we're not going to work towards something. See, that's what you do. You get in here and you work towards really treating the problem, but it takes time. It may not feel good that first day. It may hurt. You go put those weights up, you're going to be sore for about a week. So, it's not going to feel good, but what it produces later, and then the more you do it, the less sore you are until you jump up to that next one. So you're actually getting to a point where, you're reestablishing the body and how it's supposed to be. A lot of young folks can't relate to that because, they haven't had that injury yet until they do.
Yeah.
Until they're stopped in their tracks.
And the nature of this job, honestly, is that if you're really good at it, then believe it or not, your work is actually creating a situation where people respect you less, because the problem never happened.
Right.
You prevented it.
Right.
I'm in the prevention business.
Right.
So if a person tears their ACL and the surgeon repairs it, they fix their ACL.
Right. They respect
so
that.
You see what I'm saying? That's what's respected in our culture.
I do, but the thing is, God sees what you do.
Yeah.
So I think in the end, sure, people, because I'm gonna tell you right now.
But that's also easy for my life to be to be led by Christ, to be a servant based, because it's like I can full send to that and it's also like the nature of this, not just me. It's not personal to me.
That's right.
It's the nature of any healthcare provider that's really good at, just like any leader. The best leaders are the ones that actually have an effect on the group that's so powerful,
right,
that they left and made everyone think it was their idea and escaped like a shadow in the night.
That's right. And the thing is, I think in that you have to recognize it's where their mindset is at, because the same crowd that Jesus walked through healing every day is the same crowd that wanted him condemned.
Yeah.
Right? But even though the disciples were scared of the crowd, okay, they understood what was going on, especially after he reappeared to them, right? So where your mind is at, recognizing who you do it for, because you're right. If you're in the prevention business, sure, they don't always give you your kudos, but you're not even the type of guy who's always looking for the kudos, right?
But also, it's kind of, I know I'm lucky in the fact, and I know I'm in the right lane because of that.
That's right.
Because I don't really, I truly have, it's helped me condition my heart.
There you go.
To be kind of in alignment with who I feel like I am.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
And that's who God created you to be.
Yeah.
Right. And you learn how to listen, and then you're here, and then you're putting prevention, and you are maintaining what he created, which is wonderfully made, beautifully, wonderfully created. And you are helping that to continue to be that way versus, hey, let me just put this artificial hip or this artificial thing in you. Right. And then it lets you function for a little while, but kind of, because it's never the same as what God created.
And in some cases, it might be an option. I say yeah. Right. Like I've seen hips before where they look like ice cream cone.
Well, you don't have a choice.
Especially when it comes to traumatic
right. You
injuries.
don't have a choice. But when you have
with
a
non-traumatic stuff, which is most of what we're seeing.
That's right.
Like 80% of orthopedic surgeries are non-traumatic, and it should be the other way. It should be 80% traumatic, 20% non-traumatic.
Right. Because in the end, it's the almighty dollar, 100%. Brother. You know that.
But also the art of the degenerative conditions and the wear and tear of cartilage is why. But why is there so much osteoarthritis?
Right.
Because of inflammatory processes that aren't being dealt with in our food supply, in our exercise habits, in the guidelines and recommendations from our authorities.
That's right.
All those recommendations support what's going on.
That's right. The proper way to actually maintain versus the immediate want kind of mentality. And then it's all that setup, because you're right. A lot of that stuff, it's not natural. So you have all these preservatives or these artificial materials in these things and you don't recognize what it really does to your body over time.
That's right.
You know, as we're trying to be healthy. I mean, you're trying to be healthy. You're drinking, these plastic water bottles that have been sitting in the sun, and now they have, nanoplastics and PFAs in them.
Yeah, fake estrogens.
You got to watch.
It's basically what your body assumes is estrogen, and kind of is the problem with a lot of our puberty issues in kids, early onset puberty,
you see it
in girls, especially.
That's right. You see it.
But all these things are kind of there's an awakening for sure, and it's great to be a part of, and to see that there's actually some leadership and some things in place where you might see some kind of positive change.
Absolutely. And people paying attention to recognizing what they're putting in, what it's creating, because people just have to be responsible. You can have non-BPA, or you can have something paper, or you can have something, you think about where we used to get our stuff, right? Our fish used to come in paper. Our milk used to come in bottles. Even Cokes would come in bottles, okay? Your drinks would come in bottles. Your meat would come in paper,
That's right?
And it's all plastic wrap now, and now all over the internet, it's nanoplastics and PFAs. And then, it's I think in a fearful kind of mentality, it's meant to kind of, some people, that it's like, whoa, hold on, do I not? But it's more so just be aware. So when you make those decisions, you do that. So when you're really promoting health it's 360 health, and you don't run into those situations. Now, sometimes it's great that advances in medicine allow us to still have it, where before they would have cut your leg off, right? So you have something, but that's not the first thing that we go to, right? The first thing we do is maintain what God gave us, and that's the beauty within what you do, in recognizing, you know, hey, let's try to get you back to natural if we can.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. So you are the owner of Para Juice Bar.
Yeah,
which,
yes, sir.
And hearing you talk about it is really, I love hearing your passion behind this. And then you like, just to show people that like you really believe in that. You've literally like put your money where your mouth is with this project. You want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, you know, Pure is I'm gonna be honest with you. Pure is the kind of thing where I started kind of paying attention to what was going on. So anytime I would go out to eat, get some food wherever, it always had to be high fructose corn syrup, some kind of soda, some kind of high sugar thing. Man, me too. Sweet tea. And then it got to a point where all I can really do now is it's going to be, cranberry juice or pineapple juice, because that's all they ever have if they have a full bar, right? And the pineapple juice is probably 100% pineapple juice, but it's in a can that's lined with plastics, okay? So I have to recognize, so what I try to do, like even that bottle you have is non-BPA plastic, so I recognize it's not sitting, and it's something that's fresh.
Like an hour
that's right.
ago,
We just made, that's right. We make it.
Truck.
That's right. It's not sitting there. It's right. So it doesn't have a chance to kind of get inundated by the heat and change it. And then non-BPA means it's cleaner. But of course, we're always looking for cleaner sources like, naturally sourced paper. But the thing is you take something the way it was designed to be ingested, not for quick, you want it now kind of thing. Of course, they're making hundreds of thousands of them. They need to do it quick. So it's all kind of chemical processes in that, and looking into that, I think it's just, you take fruit, and I love fruit, and you turn it into juice, right? And it's fresh, good juice, and it's good for you. So, and me, but you got to understand, I'm a little different with a lot of things, because I'm kind of conscious of the caffeine. I'm conscious of just any kind of chemical I put in my body. So instead of me drinking something caffeinated, I want to drink something that's natural energy, right? So I want some orange juice, some lemonade, something that is going to give me a little kick, that's going to give me sustained energy.
The ginger, lemon,
there you go,
cayenne,
that's right,
hit every time I drink that.
Right.
I'm ready.
That's right. That riser grind, that hot shot. That's right. Something that's going to hit you, and you're like, hey, I'm good, and it's sustained.
Yeah.
And of course,
and you actually it's fueling your gut. So your gut's producing more serotonin and dopamine.
Right.
Like that's where it's all made. That's where all the good stuff's.
That's right.
The neurochemicals are made here go here.
That's right. Your pituitary gland saying, "Hey, let's go, release it. We're ready."
Yeah.
And it's got something in there, but it's not full of sugar, so it doesn't give you this crazy high and then this letdown. Like,
and the
so,
sugars are in it
later,
are the natural soluble sugars that your body knows what to do.
Fruit
with.
sugars like fructose and things like that. So those, but it's the right balances. It's not like 40 grams of sugar when you read the label. It's not going to be that. It's whatever's in there naturally.
Where did you get your blend? Because this one is beets, red apple, ginger, and pineapple. What was your inspiration for like how you put?
Man, honestly, when it comes to the join and beet it, beet it definitely helps with blood pressure. Beets help with blood pressure.
Yeah,
and I want
nitric oxide and endothelial cells. And,
there you go. That's right.
Yeah, that's what creates the viscosity on the blood.
That's right. So it helps it go, and that's right. And so I want something, because I'm not a big beet fan, but I want something that's going to taste good. So I did for about a year and a half. I did research, just different mixes, trying to figure out what's going to go good in what dimensions with this particular thing. So I recognize if I throw a little pineapple in there, throw some red apple in there, it goes pretty well. There's certain things that go, and sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Don't get it wrong.
Beets are hard for most people to ingest.
Right.
But this, you could taste the beets in it, but you're not overpowered by it at all.
It's not too bad,
it's
right?
Good.
Right, it's good.
Like
stuff,
I would have.
right?
I'm literally doing everything I can to sip this thing, because I was like every time
it's gone in like
because I like
5
start.
seconds.
I literally will start gulping it. I'm like, nah, like chill out for a second, like and savor.
I'm with you, man. I get a big one for a weekend, and it's gone in a couple hours. Like I'm addicted to the stuff myself,
right.
So I love doing it. And juicing is great for anybody. I mean, you could do it at home, but it's just so much with cleaning it right, making sure you're doing it, because you don't want to put chemicals in it like that when you clean it either.
Right.
You got to make sure you're doing it a clean way, but not necessarily. And that even goes to like household chemicals if we go to that stuff. So just to kind of go like sideways, when you're looking at where small cell carcinomas of the lungs, where those are kind of on a rise, especially in middle-aged women, because of them using bleach products and them using ammonia products and things like that. So these are things where
the fragrances and the products they put on their face.
That too, but even carnauba wax candles are. I mean,
Right,
instead we do the mist, with the essential oils. But so in that, it's more so how we kind of wash and clean and make sure things are done naturally, and then we also use natural. You're using just pure fruits and vegetables with as little chemicals, and you put it in a wash to get off of that.
Glyphosate is the big thing too, because they're spraying it all over everything.
Glyphosate's
right?
major, phthalates,
But so now you have like even people that are buying fresh produce, most of the time you're eating a ton of glyphosate if you're not like properly washing.
You got to
stuff.
wash it. You got to wash it. You got to soak it. You got to kind of prep it right and then get that out. Because they're even seeing that on sometimes with oranges, right? They think because it's an orange, it's nothing. The rind protects it from the chemicals. Well, their recent studies are showing that it goes through the rind and even gets to the pulp. And that sometimes, depending on how long it sits on the fruit. So you have to be aware that, and then it depends on which farmers you're dealing with. Because if they're, I don't want to mention big chemical farmers versus natural farmers. But the thing is, you have to make a decision in life. You're either going to have bugs or you're going to have chemicals.
That's right.
You can have one or the other. You can't be devoid of both.
Not only that, you can destroy the biodiversity or you can actually work with it.
That's right. And it's always best to kind of work with good because things haven't changed. Fruit's been around from the beginning. So if that's the case and God sustained it then before all these chemicals are out, it's just not mass produced on that case.
And what's funny is the organic farming practices actually produce better yields after even in the fields that have been destroyed with the monocropping and the soil's been totally stripped and devoid of nutrients and value, like they can actually now within 3 years show higher yields organically in less than 3 years in the same field that's totally stripped. In 3 years, it could show higher yields, up to 60% higher yields.
Right.
And not only that, you're producing a diversity of things and you're letting like the livestock and the different things, the natural cycles actually replenish the.
But you're taking care of the earth.
Yeah.
That's the true definition of taking care. Not throwing like 1 million cattle in one little square and then they just walk in their own filth. No. You're taking care of the earth, and then in doing so, we take care of ourselves because we have to live here. Our children have to live here, and in kind of doing something, it's not so easily like it's everywhere on every shelf because it's not so easy to produce, but it's fresh. It's yours.
I love that.
Hopefully one day it is easier to do it.
Something you can trust.
Absolutely.
And know that somebody's actually giving a shit about reducing the chemicals.
But see, that's the thing. Body. Yeah. And it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. If I'm not going to give it to myself, I'm going to give it to somebody else.
That's right.
And I love this stuff. So of course my family's drinking it, but that's also the beauty of how God links everybody together. Because in my clinic, I'll have farmers come in, right? And I'm able to kind of do things where we kind of go back and forth. Like you're able to meet different people. Like people come to us, right? And they may come for a different thing, but everybody has a role to play. And it's beautiful to be able to source that.
Pure intentions, pura. Right.
Pura, that's right. Like pura vida, like when you go to Costa Rica, pure life, my brother. That's right.
A vida loca.
That's right. Pura vida loca, right? But just to appreciate life, to love it in its true form, you have to be able to take it all in, right? So the air you breathe has to be clean. What you drink should be clean. What you eat should be clean. Hopefully, we look for that. We try, right? But if we can affect that, it's just a blessing to be in a place where I can affect that. And it started out with me wanting something where I can ingest it and be okay with it because I don't want to drink tea all day. I don't like how caffeine makes me feel, probably because I haven't drank it in so long. You see what I'm saying? But it's just I'm more sensitive to it at this point, right? So that is sustainable for me. So I can drink one of those and go have a workout and then go get some food and drink another one and then be in a place where I feel good.
Because I kind of feel like working out right now.
It gives you that.
Well,
right,
it is.
energy.
Too, if people take that for granted, it's like, do you think there's a reason that beets look like blood?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And it's actually tremendous for your blood.
That's right. It's pretty good.
And that there's not a reflection of these things. And even if when you talk to, and they research indigenous cultures and they say, how did you know that, like with the ayahuasca, for instance, they got the MAO inhibitor with effect of this plant.
That's right.
And adding it to this plant, and they say like, well, how did you know? That's like advanced chemistry. And these are just all like, there's thousands of plants out here. And they're like, the plant told me. And the researcher's like, what? You're like, yeah, the plant told me. Like, they're looking at the researchers like they're weird. They're looking at each other like, look at this guy. Like, the plant told me. Like, duh.
Right?
But we take for granted, like, when you're submersed in nature, and that's why when people do escape the matrix,
That's right.
and just kind of, and it takes even a couple days of like really, because it's energetic and we're electromagnetic.
That's right.
Your heart and the phrenic nervous system, let's say, it's all emitting waveforms from here outward.
That's
and
right.
we're interfacing, and your body and our hormones are even like starting to mirror each other from the time we started till now.
That's right.
And that would be measurable in our blood, where they could show that from the time we started till now, we actually have been working, those information is being exchanged. And I think the more we acknowledge that, the perspective window is probably 2080 unknown, right? And I think that our perspective is actually flipped, right? But then you look at psychological principles like the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? That's everyone. That's not, it's not like people are like, oh yeah, the people that are like that. No, that's you. That's all of us.
That's right.
And if you're not suspicious of yourself above and all else, and if you don't understand, confirmation bias is same thing. It's a human condition until it's not, right? The Dunning-Kruger effect is a human condition until it's not. The path to mastery or knowledge, I had more confidence in my knowledge when I graduated PT school than I do now.
That's right.
And that's why I'm so obsessed with learning, because
you want to, you're digging. You want to see kind of, is it more? What am I missing? What am I not? And it's not you're the first to maybe accept something or the last to, but it's like, what does it show that people really are responding to, and how are they responding?
Right.
You know,
and that's going to be me if I'm not have a higher awareness to overcome the natural state of human psychology and the way it works.
Yeah, right.
And I don't want to be the guy that thinks he knows more than he does. That guy looks like dumb to me personally. Yeah. And I don't want to look like that guy. That's where it starts, right?
Right.
And that's kind of
just that big headed. But you know, once you recognize your humility and then say, okay, open it up, show me so that I can help with it, right? What are those intentions? You know, going back to that, you know, what are your true intentions for that? Is it to help folks, or is it just so I can be like, hey, look what I know, you know? And I think that you have true intentions with that.
Yeah.
And I think that being that you can apply that to those folks, just like with them, they're out there and they've been existing in those situations, living off of the land for, you know, hundreds of years. And so the thing is, well, they knew we tried it and it didn't work well for this guy, so we're not messing with that. That's probably poison, right? So they're like, but this one works well, you know. And
how much of it was a need?
There you go.
A need for something, and then people that are just present, fully present,
right,
disconnected from the matrix and the programming and the EMF and the Wi-Fi and all the fluorescent lights and all the artificial, right? They're totally absorbed in what they're created in.
That's right.
And I believe that the plant did tell them.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I think that's how God talks to us sometimes, through maybe your dreams, right?
That's right. That's right.
Through your life. That's that dream you had.
Yeah.
And when you're telling that story, and the fact that I look at this reality as it is, that is as real as what we're doing right now.
I'm telling you, when you wake up and have that understanding, it's like, okay, I'm gonna let go of my way. You know, and who knows what traumatic situation that they were dealing with. Say, we ain't got no other choice. We're going to have to try this, right? Something's got to work. But, you know, trying to titrate what dilution is really going to work is probably, is it too much? Is it too little? You know, so of course it's over time. And over time, you start paying attention. You make note. You recognize, and that's why we do it like this, because we know what it's going to do, you know, what it's going to open up and what we're careful to kind of put in. And I think that's the thing now. We're so inundated culturally with so much information all the time. You know, it's what is real and what is not. I think it's meant to create mass, like, you know, misinformation, and that, so foundationally you have to understand, or you're going to be misinformed and misguided, and before you know, you're going to look back. Now the beautiful thing is you can fall down and get back up. The strongest of us aren't the ones who never fall down. We're the ones who get back up.
That's right.
Right? And the ones who recognize, okay, I may have been walking it wrong. Let me walk back down that road and go back the right way.
That's right.
Right?
And
so,
the backtrack part is also where I feel like a lot of people get stuck, because the whole idea is like, as I find the truth and I realize I've made that wrong turn, and then now I start looking and realizing how much work I have ahead of me to fix this. And then like, that's where I feel like people still look at it as a choice.
Right.
And I think that's the idea, that as far as my experience, I learned that there's that midline, right? And then you're kind of living on the light, and then you're dipping into the dark. You're living on the light, you're dipping into the dark.
That's right.
And that's not what he wants, like at all. And in fact, once you look at that line as a boundary,
once you see it,
and then you realize, like, I got to stay on one side. Like, I got to literally not let myself cross into that darkness and become the light and be the light, right?
That's right. And the thing is that's powerful what you say, because that's exactly it, right? You let him, manifest his light through your path. You see it, you walk it, right? And sometimes we do stumble into darkness, and then we're like, but that's conviction, right? Because we recognize we'll never be perfect. We recognize that, but that's conviction, but not condemnation. Different when you put your life in his hands. You don't allow the enemy to condemn you for what you did and have shame for what you did.
Right.
Instead, you just say, okay, I'm going to do better. I'm going to try to do better. Because sometimes it goes down to just our thoughts, right? And sometimes it's so hard to control that. Sometimes the heart is just hard to control, right?
Yeah.
Because you see something and you immediately think of something, you may judge something, you may look at something just like not the right way, and you got to get yourself together like, nah, hey, yo, let's get back, let's get right, because that's not right. We're not going to think like that.
Well, also, is this an urge? Is it connected to my biological computer, my meat suit?
That's right.
When it comes to sex, hunger, even social,
pride, ego,
which is it's all based off our social structure and our desire to be one with the pack and have a place in it, right?
Because where's culture put you? Culture puts you, if you can take from the weak, that means you're strong.
That's right.
Right? So the things that define you as being strong culturally are really kind of anti what God is defining, 100%. Right? Because we give to the weak, right?
That's
we
right.
help those. We pull each other up instead of I'm taking from you because I can.
And the meek shall inherit the earth.
That's right.
So, and also the rich man's more likely to fit through the eye of a needle, or a camel fit through the eye of the needle.
That's right. That's right. Then a rich man inherit the kingdom.
And that's all I need.
Right.
I'm like Yogi Berra has all these isms that are these. It is what it is,
that's right.
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
For me, I'm in love with those things because that's all I need is simple rules, simple principles,
Absolutely.
and once I have that in place, then I'm free.
It's only complex when we make it complex. Yeah. You're absolutely right, because you look at it so simply, and then you can look at it both ways. So is the camel fitting through an eye of a needle, or is the camel fitting through an eye of a needle, which was a gateway back in the day when they went in Jerusalem? There was these eyes, right, that the camel had to fit on. And when the camel had all the bags on its back and it would try to fit through there, it couldn't. So they had to take all the bags off of the camel to get it through there. It can be looked at two ways. You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
But if you look at it that way, that means you have to take everything that you're carrying, all your baggage, and leave it outside the gate.
And guess what? That's what's going to happen.
That's right.
You can't take it
anyway.
You ain't even taking this.
That's right. So are you gonna wait until that time to be like, oh, I should have let it go? Or are you gonna let your baggage go now?
Yeah.
Are you going to let your ego go now? Are you going to let your love for money go now? Are you going to let your hate or that grudge that you had for that person because they did you this kind of way when you went up in there? People grow, people change. You're carrying something like we talked about earlier. You're drinking the poison, expecting them to be hurt because you're carrying something that they did to you. They don't even remember they did it to you.
That's right.
And so at what point do we let go and just say, hey, we follow that with love, which is why when they, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's easy. It's hard sometimes when you're saying, hey, man, good job, and they're looking at you like you suck. That can be hard, but you still got to give them that, hey, good job, because that's what love does. We have to love those when they're treating us good, when they're treating us bad, because to treat good for good that's just natural human behavior.
Right.
But to treat good for evil, that's divine. That's what he gives you power to do. And it's hard to do sometimes.
And that's the forgiveness is our divine frequency that we can access. But man, there's something you said, and it had me thinking about how jealousy, envy, and admiration are actually the same energy. And then we are allowing that energy to be steered into a direction of a negative or a positive, right?
That's right.
And I truly believe that our primitive nature, our less divine nature, let's say, which is what we all start out as babies.
That's right.
The most egotistical little things you'll ever see, right?
Feed me. It's all about me.
That's right.
That's right.
So we start off as the most egotistical thing there is, and then we're working towards our divine nature. That's a part of the learning, sharing, growing of life, right?
That's right. And you know, the craziest part about that is that flesh is the most needy, the most egotistical, but our spirit as a baby just came from God.
That's right.
Right?
And so there's a lot of children. Yeah, you'll see 2-3-year-old children. You're like, they are really, like, they'll show you things, and you realize that what we've lost.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's such a push pull. It's like, you know, you have 2 wolves. Which one do you feed? You know, do you feed that good one? You feed that bad one.
Isn't that funny? It goes back to like the angel and the devil.
Yeah, you know, it does. But it does. But it's meant to be that way. I mean, like, there's books that aren't included in the Bible because it was saying the flesh in all ways is all evil. So just feed the spirit. The flesh is no good. The flesh is no good. God made us both. He even came down here and walked fully God and fully human. He had both just to show us it could be done, right? Make us
and also
understand
say,
he relates.
you're just like me.
That's right.
The only difference is I know who I am and have pure intentions, and you don't.
So model after this life I've shown you.
That's
You
right.
have that. Speaking in parables, I've given you that. You know, they're saying, you know, show us a sign, no sign will be given. Why? Because I've already shown you guys signs, and you're not trying to hear what I'm talking about.
And I'm telling you, I'm the son of man.
Right.
You're the son of man.
Like, come on.
Like, I'm telling you that we're not much different, other than my belief is what is reality and yours isn't. Yours is still it's intellectual. It's not intuitive.
It's your perception.
Yeah.
Where I have God perception, the whole, I've created everything. I've spoken all in existence with the word. A word, and people don't recognize how powerful a word is. I mean, word is that powerful that it created all existence. And so our words are powerful. We speak into something, and we don't recognize how much it can hurt, or how much somebody holds on to that situation, and then it creates all these other feelings that somebody may or may not tell you. It depends on how secure in themselves that they are. So we have to be intentional but careful with our words, but also humble, right? Because Jesus was humble, but he was also bold. So we do bold humility. And that is something that, it's difficult to kind of get down, because sometimes that bold humility, that passion turns into ego. Like, I know more, I'm better, and I'm not. I'm not. I'm just a part of this body. And if we help each other, we can do it together. But there's some things I'm gonna get to a stop, and I need you.
That's right.
And if I can't do it, if I'm the right foot, I still need the left foot. I'm hopping around. I'm gonna be hurt.
That's right. That's right.
Who's the arm? Who's picking it up? You know what I mean? I need somebody to guide us. I can't see where I'm going. It's so much to that, right? So it's why we have to be very careful about how we're relating, what we're saying, and then and the thing is I'm gonna be honest with you. I used to be this person that was like, well, I'm saying you can deal with it. You should be able to deal with it, whatever, because I can. Whatever. I can
I'm
just
just
say,
telling the
it's
truth.
my truth. Right. It's my truth. Right. But then I think what God has shown me, especially more recently, is some people have been through some different traumatic things, and you have to give them that food differently. Like, you got to give it baby food. Like, mash it down from, you don't just give that baby steak. You got a stomach, you're going to eat the steak. No, you're going to give it to them in a baby food kind of way. You give them a little apples. You start them with something small that they can digest, they can understand, and they can grow with. And when it gets to that point, sure, y'all can have steak together, but at that point, and there may be some areas where you still need that broken down, but there should be a point where it gets to a point where instead of us consuming, we're feeding.
That's right.
And we see that, and we can be attentive and sensitive to what that person is dealing with, not just saying like, hey, it's my truths. And maybe it is, but our truths don't always have to be said to people that can't handle it, because sometimes
100%.
we push them away. I think sometimes that's the problem with the gospel, is some Christians push other people that would be Christians away because it's a little too harsh for them at that time.
And they're trying to drive their truth, their story, their narrative. And I've learned that with leadership. if you put your narrative before somebody else's, you're already wrong.
That's right.
It doesn't matter if the narrative you have is more even accurate than what they have to say.
Right.
It's not their truth, and if it's something they did, and you're trying to speak to their mindset or thoughts or anything, you're wrong.
Right.
Even if you're right, you're wrong.
Even that's right, because it's your deliverance. So sometimes that passion can be mistaken for like an egotistical mindset. So you have to just kind of be able to kind of control that. We can be passionate about certain situations, but we have to be very careful to understand who we're speaking to and who's speaking through us to that. Because is it us or is it him?
Right.
You know, because if it's us, it's really nonsense.
Right.
Right. I mean, what are we really talking about? But if it's him, then it may be unlocking some things to give people freedom.
That's
which
right.
is what they, people just, they're looking for peace, for joy, right? For gentleness, for kindness, for the ability to have long
Which is
suffering
all
or self-control.
Those are all divine
Right, the fruits of the
qualities
Spirit, right?
that are a part of us, and that we can choose to embody and embrace, and to create a heaven on earth, create a life
Right.
that feels
Absolutely.
divine and godly. And it's because the battle is removing those negative emotions that we can control from our life.
Exactly. And the ones that are doing that, they're telling us, hey, have what you want now, right? They got all of these, all these crazy things that they're talking about, leaving young corpses and all of that. No, the Bible's talking about, gray hair is the splendor of an old man, right? It's a crown of splendor, right? So that means it's good to have a long life, right? You honor your mother and father, you'll have that. So in these kind of situations, we have to recognize where culture is lying, right? And where we must do these things, because it's one or the other. Flesh is always strife, dissensions, divisions. Just name a few. It's always like, I'm better, I'm greater, we're arguing. But it always comes with strife, jealousy, envy, all these things. But where there's joy and peace and long suffering or self-control, you're going to have peace.
Right.
So if you can control that thing, so sure, you may have something every now and then, but do you have to have it every day?
Right.
Does it have to affect you every day? If I go to dinner with you and I know that you used to be an alcoholic, do I have to have wine or beer at that moment? Even if I don't ever drink wine or beer?
Right.
Right? Can I, at that moment, can I say, you know what?
Right.
Not this time.
I'm
because
actually looking through your perspective instead of focusing on what I want.
There you go.
And that's life.
Right. Because how much do I really want it? Do I really need it? And then in the end, what is the greater good? Is it that you won't be tempted, or is it that I can feel that for that moment?
Or is it me, or is it us?
Right.
And I think every time as individuals we make it about us, we thrive.
That's right.
And we actually find that our purpose isn't something that's always, if it serves you, then it's not really serving a purpose. So the purpose that does serve you greatest and gives you the most capacity to get to the highest level, right? It's always that, right? And the pattern of nature.
Right.
So it's one becomes two. Blood vessels, one becomes two.
There you go.
Tree limbs, one becomes two.
Come on.
So as spiritual vessels, guess what we're meant to do? We're meant to duplicate the energy that made us who we are, and know who we are first. And that's the thing. If I could snap my fingers, I wish that I could just give everybody 5 seconds to just know who they are, to feel 100% attached to the spirit that and to know who they are as a divine spirit.
Man, how
and to
powerful that would be.
realize that they can live their life here.
That's right.
As that.
Yeah.
Now.
And be happy now without all of these things that you feel like you have to be. Understand you already are.
They already are.
And he created that. It's wonderfully made. So you don't have to, get that or get this to be defined by that. He's already defined us. It's just about how do we.
Every human soul is a reflection of God. You're a leaf of the tree of God.
That's right.
You are God, and not an egotistical version of that.
Right, I know what you're
but
saying,
you're
but his
made
spirit
of the
is in you.
same stuff.
Right. Yeah, his spirit is in you. And so his spirit is in you,
That's
but
right.
it's meant to go out and progress that spirit in a peaceful, beautiful way to folks
right.
where you can, because if they can see what they really were, so much mental disease will be gone, so much. But the if thing is an if. So in the interim, what we do is we try to show them, as he works through us, that you are beautiful.
That's right.
I don't care, no matter how
As I
this
am.
person has no matter
As I am,
right,
you are.
That's right.
It's
that's
like
right.
we are all, and that's the
and
part.
you may show me because there may be something. It may not be a beauty thing. It may be
That's right.
something different. But within
That's
that I was created for that purpose,
right.
and every purpose. And it's like, well, why this or why that? It's always it's like the man on the road, the blind man on the road in the Bible begging, right? And he's begging Jesus to come heal him. He's begging Jesus to come heal him. And, as Jesus passing by and, Jesus kind of stops and they ask, well, who sinned? Did his mother sin? Did he sin? He's like, nah, these people didn't sin. He was made that way to glorify me at this moment as he made the man see again. In other words, and sometimes we have things that we just feel like, why am I dealing with this? Why am I dealing with this? Why am I dealing with this? Because it's meant to glorify him at the right moment. People see that, and then they can maybe appreciate better their situation. So much we want things taken from us, but this is our set of weights. This is where we get strong. This was meant to glorify him so that we can see through this trauma, so we can see through this situation. Why am I dealing with this? Why am I dealing with this? All the people that he would take, that they would take to Jesus and he'd be like, oh, ye of little faith. I never understood. Why would he say, oh, ye of little faith? Because they just wanted to not have that issue anymore. Well, because of the fact that this is the thing that's going to make your spirit strong. It was never about your physical, right? It was about your spiritual being.
That's
In me,
right.
it's already there, but it's meant to be strong. So understand, it's on purpose that you're
Right.
dealing with this situation because this is what's going to make your spirit strong.
That's right.
And that in the end is hopefully once we walk through this life, we've been through enough to our spirit is strong enough to be welcome in, to be next to just his wonderful light. Just prayerfully, we've passed enough of the test the right way, right? Because we come from him. One day we go back.
That's right.
Right? But
Yeah.
but are we worthy? Because did we handle those situations properly? When something was on us heavy, did we turn to the Bible? Did we turn to the bottle? Did we turn to something worldly, or did we turn to his word and say, I trust you fully?
Right.
I release it to you. Because when you really let it go and you let it go, you really
That's
let it
right.
go.
And I think that's why a lot of where I feel like my practice has been naturally just kind of progressed to where I understand that one of the untapped resources for connecting people to their spiritual self is the disconnection to their body.
Man.
And I look at the body as a instrument that is intended to connect. It's mind, body, spirit in three parts, and it's equally weighed. And that's the considerations where if our pure intentions are really thought about and prioritized in that where we gave the same amount of time and attention to all three, and then we also consider that once we start doing that, we start realizing that the three are one, and that and actually when you rise into that more godly perspective, you get to observe all three and then gain awareness of how you're able to now be diligent and really understand how you're dealing with these. And for me in my life, I try to think of it like everything in life can be mind, body, and spiritually intended, and it all comes down to just, well, that sounds complicated. No, it goes all the way back to what we just said about your conscious awareness and about if you can be present and aware and to truly observe your emotions and reactions and thoughts in a way where you do understand it as it's not you, and you could really start to develop like a productive internal dialogue and realize the parts of that dialogue that are God and the parts of it that are your inner child speaking from
the
pride.
thing. Yeah. That's the thing. And then how do you kind of know sometimes? Well, I think you kind of know. I mean, I just because when you're speaking to yourself, sometimes you'll speak and you'll kind of forget it. You'll
You
speak
can't
and you forget
trust
it.
your intuition
That's the
until you break it down to nothing.
Yeah,
right?
it has
Until
to-
you break
you
your
have to
ego
be
down
zero.
to nothing.
That's right. Because
Yeah.
when God's pressing on you, He'll remind you. He'll tell you at 8 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, 9 the next night, the next week.
That's
He's
right.
gonna push on you like, hey, this is your
Yeah.
conviction, this is your situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the trials. I share this with you, man. I had a day, right? I had a weekend one time. Okay. And this is where I kind of really recognize this because I couldn't understand. I'm thinking like, I'm letting go of some of the things, my coping mechanisms.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I'm doing some different things, but I'm still having these issues. And I couldn't, why am I having like issues where I'm struggling with certain situations? And so I had this day, I'll tell you about this day, right? I had this day where I ate something. I ate something I probably shouldn't have, okay, and it gave me food poisoning, okay. So I was up most of the night with issues, with stomach issues, okay. My wife went dress shopping with my daughter, and when she was out dress shopping with my daughter, okay, so that was Saturday. I ate that Saturday. So Saturday night I was having those issues, but Saturday she come back and she was like, well, somebody tried to hit us with their truck when we were out dress shopping. Me and I was like, yeah, they tried to hit us with the truck, and I'm just thinking like, okay.
Thank God you
so
weren't
I had
there.
to, yes, because I've had to. That's a different conversation because the anger issues I used to have, I'm definitely trying to have that under control because I don't know how do I respond in that situation as a protector.
Yeah,
right. Because
that's
I don't want to
the one time
respond
where
how I used to
that's
respond.
where I'm like, I don't know if like all this good stuff I've been like the old person will probably, if it comes down to endangering my family, that's where it's like you don't know until you know.
You're saying something that's exactly it because you don't know. It's easy to say in my head, that happened on my, but when it happens, what do you do?
You don't know? Yeah.
But so she came home, so I was dealing with some things in that, right?
Ooh,
because normally it'd be like, you want to rip his head off. Just be honest with you, right? Because how dare you? They're on the road, he speeds up, and you try to, and it's her and the two girls. So of course, at that moment, she kind of feels helpless, and then I kind of feel helpless because I wasn't there, right? That night, I have food poisoning. I get up the next morning, right? I'm going to church to serve. That next morning, when I get up and I'm going to church to serve, my wife tells me that her little cousin, which was somebody who was that I was close to, that he died that morning. And so emotionally, physically, I was tired because I hadn't had any sleep, right? And mentally, I was bothered by the whole thing that happened. I go to church, and as I'm serving, I feel just God press on me. Because at first, you're like, yeah, maybe I should just take this day and just sit in this gloom, right? Maybe I should just take this day and sit. And no, I'm not going to let it have me today, right? So I'll go there. When I'm there, I've been having stomach issues all night into the morning. When I'm at church, I have no stomach issues. None. Zero. I don't have to use the bathroom one time. Okay? Right after church gets out, it comes right back. I'm being honest. And I served from, maybe like 7 to like maybe 12:30. But right when it got out, okay? I'm just telling you how powerful God is. This is in this night, okay? I remember this night very, very specifically because the Super Bowl was on. This night, I had a dream. Okay. In my dream, then this is where it all kind of pressed down for me. And I remember, okay, I remember, a broken spirit. Who can deal with the broken spirit, right? Because you can deal with the other broken things, but they got to work together. But a broken spirit, who can deal with, right? But I have a dream. In this dream, it's like a dust storm, a huge dust storm, okay? And I walk into it. I walk into this dust storm. And as I'm walking, people are fighting. They're fighting with guns and swords. A sword will hit me, and like part of it will cut me in the shoulder, and the dust is hitting me. And as the dust hit me, my skin's kind of like peeling off. It was kind of powerful, but crazy dream. It was almost like a sandblaster, but it was all my skin. Flesh, I would get shot, and as it would go, part of the skin, but also the dust would take it off. I was torn off. Everything was torn off. I had this sword in my hand, I remember, and I'm walking, and I just keep pushing forward, but I'm walking slow. I'm not running, walking slow because I'm pushing against the dust, and it's heavy, and all these things. And all of that fighting around me goes away. And as it goes away, all the flesh comes off of me. All my skin comes off me. And all that was left was this little like white particle light. And I had the sword, and I dug the sword, and I leaned forward into the storm. And as I did that, the white particles that made my body got brighter. Like it was like when you stoke a fire with wind. It was just like it got super, super bright. And then these dark, I don't know, it was like dark, like it was a dark element. It was some kind of so I was white particles. They were dark particles, and they would hit me. And when they would hit me, they would burn up. And it would hit me again and would burn up. Yeah. And I sat there, and it was like there was a shield on my back and a sword. Man, I leaned into and then as I leaned in, it's like the dream pulled out. And as I pulled out, I came out of the eye. And right there, I saw it was a face. And then the face was made of gold. And then there was like little dangly, it was like dangly beads on the bottom of the gold. They were gold. The whole thing was gold.
Like a Sumerian?
It was like a soldier, but it was
Have you
all
seen
gold.
the ancient Sumerians? They have like the beards with like they kind of like they look kind of like they got
so kind of
stuff
like
hanging off
yeah,
of
okay,
them or
so kind of
something?
like that's
Yeah.
right, but it had like little, but it was I don't know what these because
They're
I've
like
never
little-
seen a picture.
They're like
with
weird braided decorative twists.
Okay, so it was
Yeah.
kind of like but like
Yeah.
little balls on it, but they were
Yeah.
gold balls, and as it pulled out, and then I saw a crown of thorns, and I woke up, and all of a sudden I recognized that everything I deal with stokes my spirit. It makes it stronger. And then, instead of me complaining about what I may deal with, I was inviting it. It was like, make me stronger.
That's right.
And then I also recognized that why there were other people around me, they were fighting. It's like they were fighting over, I kind of had an understanding. So I'll have a dream and then I'll have an understanding.
Sure.
Like, right? It'll come to me. It's kind of, I don't always have it while I'm dreaming, but when I wake up, it's like God's talking to me.
Sure.
Because I'm asking questions. And then, but their spirits weren't there. It's because they were too caught up in the worldly things, right? But if I just keep walking, and then eventually he will make me strong enough to where I'm the apple of his eye. I am in him. He is in me, right? And it gave me, in that situation from the day before, it just gave me so much understanding of so many times when you're going to do the right thing. Even look at this. Before we had this conversation, we were supposed to do this 2 weeks ago, and you got sick.
I got food poisoning.
You see what I'm saying?
No, actually, it was a flu. I thought it was food poisoning.
Okay.
But my whole family
But,
got it.
but
so.
you see what I'm saying? But there's always a roadblock. Notice that before, a lot of times you do anything that is godly, that is spiritual, that is pure, you're gonna have a roadblock in your face every time,
Yeah.
and you have to be willing to push
And
through.
Actually, usually there's 3. If it's like a rule of 3.
Absolutely. No, 3 is absolutely, you're absolutely right on that. I've noticed the 3 thing too. Like I thought 3 was just this deaf thing they talked about, but now recently, that's confirmation for me. Because I'll see it like 3 places, but absolutely. So, and I'm not always counting, but just saying,
That happened.
I recognize.
I've counted a couple times after the fact, and because sometimes it's like there's like, unfortunate discomforts that happen day by day, and then there's stuff you're like, this is like next level
Like,
stuff.
come on. Right.
Before I opened Neolife for the first time, there was that kind of thing going on, and it was like I was still working like part time, trying to keep some things income going while I was getting this going.
Right.
And
I
then
did something similar.
they
with you.
fired me, and it was like Chelsea was pregnant with Ace. It was just like this wasn't in the plan,
Right.
But they knew
Never is.
I wasn't in their plan at that point because they saw what it was like. Now I'm open and I'm publicizing, and it's like clear what I'm doing, and then they were kind of almost just like trying to push me out. They found a way, basically.
Right.
And then it was like, man, it still hurt though, and I knew it was the right move, and I knew it was God.
Right.
And I knew it was Him saying, "You need to cut the cord, and you're screwing around a little
How
bit."
hard is it for us to let go sometimes?
Yeah, of the old stuff, and I feel like that in ways. And even then I knew that, but it still hurt. But it's like I can get through things quickly. Like I feel like it's healthy and natural to really, especially, Pastor Jeff talks about this a lot. Like everybody needs to experience loss at their own pace. And I think that really respecting my own capacity for that, like I'm not going to be a baby.
That's right.
But every time that I really stepped up, like when I was in college and I was alone, I didn't have anybody, I would call grandma, right? And grandma always, even times I would call her and I'd be like, I'm going to be tough. I'm not going to dump on her, let her know all this stuff. Like, I'm tough. I can handle it. And then she just had this way.
Yeah.
How you doing? Oh, yeah. And before you know it, I'm just like,
Jaws down.
like I could almost just feel like the emotions building and stuff, just like when I was a kid.
Right.
And then eventually I would just break down and Grandma, I'm scared. I'm tired. I'm broke.
Right.
I'm this, I'm that. Like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know. Like, And then, yeah. And then, she just was there for me.
But isn't that so human? Isn't that real?
Yes.
Right? I mean, who wasn't? Was Moses scared?
And guess what happened,
Were
though?
they all scared?
As soon as I would cry and be scared and let all the weakest parts of me out of my mouth and out of my head.
That's right.
And just pure vulnerability to someone. I had a safe person that wasn't going to judge me, that wasn't going to call me a sissy, that wasn't going to nothing. And I'm already a grown man, but I'm a little boy in a grown man's body.
That's right.
But her allowing me to do that, I see now how, like how lucky I was to have the proper conduit to process these things.
That's right.
And to be a little punk.
No, sometimes you have to be honest.
Be a baby.
Yeah, be that. I mean, because coach
and
says
now
you got to be a man.
I get off the phone, I'm like ready. Son.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
she
get
had
it
me.
out.
I
That's
get
right.
it. I hang that phone up and just I'm ready to kill it.
Come on,
Like,
man.
It's all gone.
But you just got to get it out, and that's okay. That's the human component, and I think that's the thing. We're raised in a society where we can't be that because we're men. No, we're supposed to be that because we are men, because we're human. You see, I think it's oh, well, they need this kind of soap and we need different kind of soap. We both have skin. Okay. The thing is we're people. And that's the whole situation. So you got to get those emotions out, give it up. And that's why it's so powerful to cry out to God, let him know. He already knows, but you still got to let him know.
That's right.
Right. And grandma had the maturity to say, hey, baby, get it out, and I'm going to build you back up.
She knew.
Right. She knows. And that's the thing. And that's why I so appreciate grandparents.
Man.
And after the fact, when now I don't have them, but I so appreciate the fact that I did have them when I did. I mean, if your grandparent is in your life, still you are blessed.
So
like,
lucky,
don't be like, oh, she got my nerves. She calling me again. Should we go to the store? Should we go do this? I got to go do this and bring her something for her feet or what? Like, be happy to do that, because in the midst of those people, they have lived life. They know things, and you have to trust the fact that experience is really the best teacher sometimes.
Yeah, and they
you.
really love you.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah,
I feel like
you.
when I have grandkids, like it's
Yeah.
gonna, because I can see why it's pure love, because I can give them back. So I can spoil them. I can let them be rotten.
And then you can give it to their
I'm
mama.
gonna make them rotten.
That's right. Just because of what you did to me when you was a baby.
I'm gonna make them rotten. I'm gonna spoil them to death.
No, you're right. But at the same time, you know what else I appreciate that? Because I can't wait to have grandchildren, just because I'm gonna feel like I'm blessed to see that generation that was down the line that I thought maybe I wouldn't get to see.
Yeah.
I always have this makeup in my head. Am I going to get to see that? At what moment won't I be around when they're doing what? Am I going to get to see them get married? Am I going to see them, have a business? Am I going to get to see them, have children themselves? What am I going to get to see in that? And I want to just take it all in and just appreciate it. I mean, because babies are the most innocent. They love you regardless. It does not matter. They just want to be close to you. And, when I was younger, I was so busy doing mine, and we'd take Saturdays and we'd hang out with the kids, but I was gone so much trying to build a business, trying to do this, trying to do that. I think that I have no regrets, but I just really appreciated when they were little and they were just so innocent. And I wish I just would have just stopped everything and just been able to do that, but it's not realistic.
The only regrets people will ever have at their death, and then when they interview these people, it's always related to the time they didn't spend doing the things that they know are the most important, which are always just spending time with people they love. It always just comes down to that basic, simple thing.
Sure, right.
Nobody ever regrets not getting a promotion or not making enough money. Nobody ever says
that's
that.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah, that's right. Because you can't take it with you.
No.
I mean, you make that money and then what? And what you do? Okay, you got all this stuff, and in the end, I mean, could it have been things what you did? Of course, in retrospect, we can, and we pour into our children and grandchildren, so maybe they don't make those mistakes. Some of us are still. I mean, I was a hard-headed child. I had to make the mistake myself. They always.
I think
told
we're
me,
a lot alike in that way.
Right.
Like I had to get it out. Like I did. Like when I was a kid, by the time I got. Like, we were already done with the casinos by the time I got to college. We were doing that in high school. That's right. We were on Bourbon Street when I was 15, 16 years old.
Hey, man, I was too, especially during, like, the Classic or the Essence Fest, or when a bunch of people were down there.
Oh, we were looking for boobies.
I mean, well,
like,
see, that's
I'm
Mardi
15,
Gras.
16 years old. I'm like, where they at?
Yeah. But, at that age, I mean, we're so influenced by, I recognize how much music influenced me. I recognize how much I had to be broken down to the point where now I can't listen to that type of music anymore because I recognize the spirit in that music influenced me too much.
It'll actually kind of, because you rebuild your sensitivity. So then you realize, like, man, like you listen to certain rap music and stuff like that, and you're like, this is making me anxious,
man.
And like
anxious or
depressed
angry or
angry,
violent
yeah.
or overly, I know it probably had me hypersexual at the time, and then you listen to like
and back in that day,
that's
was,
what I'm saying.
Oh,
Two Live
Master
Crew and
P,
Tupac and
Silk the
stuff.
Shocker.
Come on, man.
It was, man.
There's a lot. But even with
Juvenile.
Tupac talking about
Tupac.
he knows his destiny is hell. Like, was I listening to that? Like, because that's not my destiny.
And now knowing that the satanic influences that run the music industry back then, they was doing it loud
yeah. You didn't know, but and because how quick did music make that paradigm shift? Because it was clean for a little while. I mean, I came up on Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Nice and Smooth, stuff like that was easy stuff. Sometimes I rhyme slow, sometimes I rhyme quick. It wasn't,
Mace was good.
I mean, stuff like, it was easy, like a hip to the hip to the hop, all that kind of stuff, And then all of a sudden it was gangster rap, and we're like, what is this? It starts with Bone and Thugs and all this other kind of stuff, because their first album was different than their others, but as music, it slowly,
DMX,
it slowly did that, and even real quick, I remember I went from listening to the Boys and Boys to Men to sneaking a 2 Live Crew tape, and it just all of a sudden was like, what are they talking about? Like, this is crazy. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about, right? But they did it real slick, but they knew it was going to influence us. They knew the spiritual components of music. All of that stuff. Ghetto Boys, all that.
I ain't a killer, but don't push me.
Come on, man. But it influenced us, and I think it influenced me to be more violent than I should have been. That's not my nature. My nature is to care for it. That's what I do.
And I was really violent when I was young.
And see, that's the thing. And I was young, and we have to protect our honor because we're from D'Iberville, and we go to this place, and they're trying to fight us.
Well, D'Iberville tells you gotta have sex with a lot of girls, and you need to fight. And you need to be the best
there
at
you
it.
Go. That's
and
right.
The D'Iberville people beat everybody else up at parties and everywhere else. And that's our thing.
It did happen like
and that's
that.
The stories you heard about all the people before you that anybody cared about that were the real guys.
Right.
That's what you talked about. Their fights, their hits in football, the girls that they were dealing with.
That's right. Yeah, and then that's what it was. But then you recognize how much of that had to be worked out of you when we got grown to really be close to God. How far was it pushing us away? And then how much do we have to break yourself all the way down and recognize, I would go to church and think, I can't relate to that stuff. And now I'm thinking like, man, I was tripping. Like, because I can relate to all of that. And I'm so glad that he allowed me to have a chance to have retribution when I was just so lost in a place. And then because I was so lost, I'm coping with things that make me feel better for a moment.
That's right.
But when it wears off, I feel worse. Yeah, those chemicals are, it's those intrusive things, those chemicals in your mind and your body, and it's all coming back, and it's just like this letdown, and you're just feeling like, what am I doing? What is my purpose? Because it can't be this.
That's right.
It has to be more pure. I'm so glad that I met my wife in college. Even though at the time I was on the wrong, but I'm glad she turned into my wife. She made me into a man. She made me be honest. When she had my son, made me be honest to what was truly life. Right? God blessed me and he believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. So how can I not honor him? You see, it's just it just was a situation where I was going down the road. There's so many days, man. I just think that I could have been dead or in jail because I was doing the wrong thing. So many times I can recall that, but God kept me and put me in a place.
How many DUIs did you miraculously escape?
Man, I'm gonna tell you this. I wasn't a big drinker. See,
whatever.
Right. But I'm gonna tell you this. There was one time I'm not gonna
because
lie.
I could tell you honestly, even if you look before I was even legal to drink, I probably got lucky where I was like I got lucky 5 times.
Right. Well, yeah. See, this is the thing. There's one time I'm on the way to an interview in college, and I'm lying. You know what? I did miraculously escape a DUI because my buddy came in from Jacksonville, and we drank like a 12-pack all the way, back to Tallahassee, like stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that in the car?
We do that in the back of a truck.
But we're doing it on the interstate. We're doing this. Like, come on, man. I think from the interstate, from the airport, we can't wait till we get home. It's a 2-hour drive. Like, it was just dumb stuff, Or the time where, I'm on the way to an interview. I'm running late, to catch a plane in Jacksonville, coming from Tallahassee, just stupid stuff. And the cop tries to pull me over from the other side. I keep going and get behind the truck, right? So I make it to the airport. He gets stuck in the median, just dumb stuff. But I mean, how many times was me being dumb, influenced by the wrong things that could have turned out the wrong way, and it didn't? And I feel like grace was apparent, so that I could be different, that I could honor him properly.
When you were that age, was there something in your head that was like, when I hit this age, I'm going to stop doing this? Because for me, I did that.
You did that? You said at this age, I'm going to do this?
So when I was like, I just remember being younger and like high school or like 20s, early 20s, and being like, all right, when I hit 26, I'm going on the straight and narrow. Like,
you
I'm
had
going to
an
straighten it
age.
up. Like, I kind of knew that even this, like, I've always had a very acute sense of what to do and right and wrong, and like a connection to God, honestly. Now I understand it for what it was. Even when I was younger, like, I've always just had an acute sense of what I needed to do, despite what everybody else was doing and everything else.
I had conviction, but somehow, at that time, not as much. I just,
And I think it was my
thought that's
grandma.
what it's supposed to.
I think it's because she took over when I was 4.
That's good stuff.
When I was 4.
Oh, wow.
And my mom did a great job before that, but we were poor, broke. They didn't even know I was alive.
Really?
Like, my mom moved over there because my dad was a bartender, 25 years old. My mom was a patron. It was like a one-night stand deal, right?
Gotcha.
And so there's a lot of shame on her end, I'm sure. And then I think the way she probably isn't very aggressive, so she probably was pretty passive about how she approached him with the situation. And then I think he balked at it in some way, or maybe didn't take it seriously, or who knows. But she was like, all right, peace. She went to Florida where her dad lived, and her sister lived already, and that's where I was born. And because she didn't have any help, resources, money, nothing. And then my granddaddy over there, he had some money and resources, and he'd been there for a while. He inherited a construction company from his dad, and he kind of ran it into the ground. He was an alcoholic, but but I never saw him drunk.
Right.
And he was always super kind and never abusive. Never heard a story about him being abusive or yelling at anybody. So that must be where my mom got her sweet nature. But that's where I was. So once I was like 4, my aunt story is that she reached out and called my grandma and said, hey, Dot, Scott has a son, and he's 4, and we're in Brevard County, Florida. And she said, Grandma said, you better bring that baby home.
How about that? Man, that's and look at what God has done with that. It's always the ones that they feel like, well, it's starting that way. It's not the way the world sees it, but God will take that.
And she was ready.
Make it beautiful.
So she'd already raised hundreds of kids, right? She had a child care center. She raised 4 of her own kids. Her grandpa had just retired from his second career from Ingalls. So he did 20 years in the Air Force and then 20 years at Ingalls. And so they tell the story like they were just, getting set up to be retired and do what retired people do, whatever that is, right?
Right.
And they're like I'm talking servants like you've never seen. Like,
Really?
I didn't know anything different. So from the time I was 5 to the time, really it was informative years until I was probably, I still had a room at their house until I was out of college. But I was, I lived with them full time until I was 13 because my dad he was working out of state for 6 months at a time sometimes. So I wouldn't see him for 6 months. And so as a kid, man, that was rough.
Yeah.
But man, they had full control. They knew what they were doing, bro.
Right.
She was a Jedi, dude. Looking back, I'm like, wow.
Thank God.
And I was her project. She's used to doing this. This is her efficient state. And like, she's a type where you really pay attention to like how she's the definition of the meek shall inherit the earth and like that humble leadership. Yeah. She was the best leader that I've ever seen.
That's awesome.
I've ever seen.
That's awesome.
But she was 4'11", 5 foot flat, whatever.
It's not stature, man. It's that mental, man. She had it right in her spirit. Her spirit was right. It's awesome.
She'd have 10 grown men running full speed in the most productive stuff you'd ever seen, like whether it was a project. I'm talking they would put up what seems today would take a month, they would do in like a weekend with the church, like
Really?
like a building or something, like stuff.
She was a servant. She was dedicated,
because everybody wanted. She was so loving, and they wanted to make her proud.
I got you. See, that's the true leadership. You
And
know,
so they were
you know how to
trying. They
inspire
would break
them.
their backs,
Right.
And she never even really asked. She would be clear what we're doing and what needs to get done, and then she
Right.
was going to sit there and make sure everybody had drinks and food and snacks.
But she
and
took care of them. It wasn't just what you can
100%.
do for me. It's about
100% serve,
Yeah.
serve.
Right, serve.
And then in
Service.
turn, everybody was serving, which was always a bigger picture. It was never self-serving to her. When I woke up on a weekend, it would literally be like my grandpa was getting ready for work. Even during the week, they were retired.
Really?
So he would wake up 7:00, just like he was going to work. They'd drink coffee, whatever. And then she would say, all right, Bob, you're going to Lucille's and you're going to do the gutters. And then we got to stop by Joanne's, all these widows. So now he became there. So she's
Oh, he's doing their list.
she's on the
for
phone
'em,
on the prayer line all day, every day.
I got you.
Right? She's counseling people all day, and they're praying together. And this is every day, bro.
That's awesome.
Wednesdays, I'd wake up, and there'd literally be like 40 women over the age of 60 in my house, and I'm like in my underwear like this, walking to the refrigerator, and they're like in there playing
What's
cards
going
every
on,
Wednesday.
right?
I'm talking there and there, just chatting it up. And so I just hung out with a lot of older people, and they all loved me. They all treated me like
But
the
God
golden
had
child.
God had you in his bosom. And,
Yeah.
it's same thing with my mother. My mother was church to church, had us in church. She did the best. It just was culture was pulling us, but she did the best and had us in there, had us coming up and, and had us understand what that looked like, because regardless, she would always love us. And she showed us love regardless. So there wasn't really an age. There was when my son was born, I said, okay, enough of the foolishness. Enough of living in the frat house and doing all the stuff that, I'm going to be responsible. I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to take care of my wife. She wasn't my wife then, but she was going to be, and I'm going to do right because he's blessed me with this. He won't bless me with this for me to fumble this.
That's right.
Right. So I'm going to do, and I know, and then the example was how what my mother did with us. She always made sure, even if she couldn't do it herself, we ate, she didn't eat, she's going to make sure she did that. But she was a servant of God. She still is. She's in her Bible. She's on her knees praying. I come in from the club at like 4 a.m. and she's on the couch crying, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? You know what I mean? I'm trying to figure out what's going on, how to comfort her, because she always comforted us, but she was always worried about us. She wouldn't go to sleep unless we were in that house. And we didn't know how to act right. I ain't gonna lie. I wasn't could have been a better child.
Yeah.
I thank God for my children,
Yeah.
but I thank God for
Well, you
your
was always
grandmother.
cool. I remember back in the day, because I'm from the Cove. Like I was like I said, I was quite a few years behind you, but we was all in that same neighborhood,
Right.
In the same neighborhood I become a councilman of, believe it or not. Right? Isn't that crazy?
That's good stuff.
Yeah. And
But
then,
who else? Who better?
Right?
Come
hey,
on.
hey, that's my neighborhood,
That's
boy.
right.
I was there. to
Forest
take care of
Cove, baby. That's right.
it. Yeah, but I remember like just being around the block and then seeing you and those that generation and your friend group and just being like, man, those are the cool kids.
We'd be at Jermaine's house playing ball all the time.
Like those are the cool guys. Like when y'all was in high school stuff, I'd be like, man, just the way y'all talked and acted and stuff. I was like, oh yeah, they're cool.
That's all right,
Yeah.
man. It's all good. But the thing is, in Forest Cove, we had to watch out for each other because we get picked on by everybody else because they didn't think.
Oh,
but
yeah.
the thing is, I think the whole time is praying mothers, praying grandmothers. That's the thing. I think the whole time they protected us from some of those dangers that we were putting ourselves in.
Yeah.
Culture was leading us down these crazy paths, and God was keeping us because they were praying for us on a daily
I
basis.
think you actually, I don't know if you even remember this, but I swear there's a part of my memory that feels like you saw it. I got in a fight with this big dude named Brandon something, and it was in Maurice,
Johnson?
no, Maurice,
Maurice Lewis and Maurice
Lewis
Johnson.
and his brother, and he had his
Okay,
older-
Jermaine's his brother. That's
and
who we used
how-
to play
and
basketball
that-
at.
Yes, okay. So
Okay.
it was in their front yard.
Oh.
Yeah, it was like one of the first fights I got into, and he was a lot bigger than me too. It was just some kid from the
Man,
neighborhood, and it
long
was like
time.
it was like we were squared up, and it was like all the kids was out there. And,
Oh man, you
yeah,
missed right at
yeah.
the spot,
And
huh?
it wasn't a good fight or nothing, but I just remember it was like y'all's group. y'all wasn't in the middle of all this, but y'all was like off in the perimeter just doing what y'all was doing or whatever. And then they had Jessica Suttis brothers, Loco and Chino lived in the neighborhood.
Listen to you, man. Yeah, I just was talking to Chino today.
Really?
Yeah, Chino has a roofing business in town. So every now and then, I just was talking to him today. I mean, I still keep in touch with those guys. Yeah, those because when we grew up together, they're right, because they were off in that corner.
Right, and then C-Wright and them lived
That's
across
right.
the street.
That's right.
And then
Yeah.
the Cottons lived over in the
That's
back
right,
corner.
with all the cars
So that
in the
was,
front. And then you had Keita and Trey over there, and Tarson said. And I mean, everybody was in that little, so that's on the back side. That's right. I lived on the front side.
And that was
all
the bus route too.
That's
and
right.
So,
That's
and
right.
I was on Moy.
Okay.
And that
Okay.
you know where it's at when you're going out like the Moy to Brody way.
Yeah, I know
That-
it comes out that. Yeah.
That house that's it's because they were like one of the first houses in Forest Cove. And so they had like 3 acres right on Moy, right on the
By the trailer
perimeter.
park. Okay.
No,
The trailer park's behind it, right? Rolling Hills?
no, it's south of that.
Okay, on the other side.
Yeah, on the
by
other side.
Mr. CJ.
So if you get out on Brody, going,
Oh yeah, you're
on
talking
Moy.
about right. Okay, no, I know you're
Yeah.
talking about the little dead end like this. We take the little shortcut behind it and
Yeah,
go. Okay,
and it
yeah.
takes you out to Brody Road.
That's right.
And
I know
then
you're
there's
talking
like a little
about.
ditch and all
Okay,
right there.
yeah, little ditch.
Yeah.
The ditches were how we used to get
We
around.
used to walk
man.
through there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
the
the
little
shortcuts.
highways,
That's
yeah.
right. That was our highway.
Yeah.
Okay.
That went all the way behind our property right there.
So you talking about Brandon Pookie's brother?
um
You must be, because that's like the only Brandon. He's a big guy. But, he lived over there around the corner from us. We were on Ginger. Yeah.
he still works at like Walmart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That
see.
Brand, really?
Yeah, the big teeth.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I know
Yeah.
who you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy
No,
about
no,
that?
that's not where I live, but I know. Who
No,
you're
no,
talking
no.
about.
That's the Brandon I'm talking. Is that
'Cause
the
he
Brandon?
lived around the corner from y'all.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Brandon the other day. So my daughter's driving this 20-year-old truck last week, and last week the truck stopped working on her. Okay, and when it stopped working on her, she's over there by the J Mart. Brandon pulls up and he tries to help her out. It's just crazy how now that we have children and stuff, everybody still knows each other.
Every
and
time
we
I
still
see him,
support.
he's always like, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
And then Lewis Henderson, I bump into him all the time. He's
Doctor.
still-
He's Dr. Henderson now. I don't know what his doctor, but I see him every now and then. Yeah.
Well, he's in
Lewis.
administration.
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah.
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 But he's up there. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. Small
Yeah.
world, man. That's
that's
all
what I'm
right.
saying. We actually go like we're more connected than even we realize now.
Right.
Because professionally, we've just kind of gotten to know and respect each other as adults.
Right.
But yeah, as we're kind of thinking back in childhood, a lot of the same. I was conditioned in the same space. So even though I was a grandma's boy, I knew that neighborhood, in its own way, it wasn't rough, but it wasn't.
right.
It wasn't like it was back when we was riding our bikes.
That's right.
And dude, our generation was, if you think about it, we were really lucky.
Yeah. No, we were, because
We were
used to
in a
go
tween.
everywhere.
We had this connection to the old school,
Yeah.
and then we were there
Yeah.
during those formative years
That's
while
right.
cell phones started coming into
That's
play,
right.
and smartphones
Video
started
games.
coming into
If
play.
you were lucky if you had a Nintendo
Yeah.
or whatever. Most times we were outside playing. That's before the road was even going to the post office. It was just woods right
You
there.
want to see your friend?
We
You jump
playing
on your
wood.
bike and you drive to his
That's
house
right.
and you see if there's other bikes in the yard, and then you ride up.
Right.
You know?
If the bikes aren't there, they're not there.
Nope.
They're somewhere else.
Or
but
sometimes you
know.
still may knock and check just in case.
Yeah.
Because
They're around
if
the back.
if
yeah.
you didn't want certain people to
That's
come,
right. You come around
had
the
to
back.
hide the
That's
bikes
right. Listen to that.
to make
That's
sure.
good stuff.
And then they show up knocking. You're like,
You're like, oh, hide. You had to hide. One time we hid in the garage for like an hour. I'm like, who we hiding from? I'm like, what is
Bro,
going on, yo?
that was it.
That
I
was
remember
it.
that.
But that's pure childhood. I mean, we really, I think as children, we made up games on the spot. We had a
Mm-hmm.
great time. Like, I mean, I love that little neighborhood, and it just all was just, we were all kind of conducive with appreciating each other. It's when we started getting older and driving that we recognized that maybe everybody else didn't like
Yeah,
us.
but we was allowed to grow. I feel like I was able to make all my childish blunders when I needed to make them before they really could.
No, you're right.
And I feel like, but I was also able to express, because I really see it in children, and that's why I say I feel like every human's meant to experience all conditions and emotions, because I feel like, and if you're in a good, healthy life path with you just get all that out as a child.
Yeah.
And then
Right,
like really
right.
26, and that I think is that it is a really important psychological benchmark and growth benchmark, mind, body, spirit, because it's like that frontal lobe coming online. You kind of reach in the conclusion of your adolescence, and now you're officially a young adult.
That's right.
But that's significant in a lot of ways, because that's the point in time where the routes for validation must change. Because as a child, you're kind of allowed, or let's say adolescent, the nature of all your validation comes from your coach, your teacher saying, good job, good job, good job, good job.
People always giving you approval.
And somebody says bad job, it's
like, what do you mean?
The world's
what do you mean?
shook.
I tried did I try? Could I have done different? Like what I
right.
did different?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, you get shook because you are who you think that I am versus I am who I am.
That's
I
right.
am who you think.
That's right.
No, I am who I think that you think that I am.
That's right. People's approval of me makes me. Then right when and people will use that against you, because right when they feel like they got you, they'll disapprove to have you in that corner. Like, what are you going to do to get my approval back?
It's a typical narcissistic path.
It.
And that's also narcissism is a spectrum, of course, but every baby is a narcissist. Like every child at some degree, they're heavier on this narcissistic spectrum, and we're meant to all be narcissistic as a baby
it's almost
and child.
like a survival. It's almost like a survival mechanism.
It's you have to start that way.
Yeah, you have to start that. That's right. Wean off and recognize, because we have to have the knowledge to recognize we're cared for because
100%.
of who we are made, not because of approval, but because of approval of Christ. And how do we gain that?
That's exactly
and
right.
then that's the situation, But in that, I agree. I think in the cauldron of what it was, life, man, was just free. It was just love. We grew up. I mean, I would not change anything about my childhood, because I had the best childhood.
I did too.
I loved it. I took some L's, but I had some W's. But regardless, it was a beautiful thing to be free. My mama just would let us go. You go out and play. You come home when the street lights come on.
We used to go. Nobody stopped us.
No, that wasn't.
My grandparents, if they were literally like not. I'm like, dang.
You do whatever you want.
You do whatever
You drink out the hose if you're thirsty. You might come in once to eat. You know what I mean? We would pee behind the house. Like it was like we were out there. You know?
I got pictures. We'd literally be barefoot in that ditch.
Yeah.
With flounder gigs. Stabbing moccasins that were like 6 foot long.
You're right.
I got a piece of plywood with snakes all the way down. And here's how we did it. So we were all barefoot, like idiots, walking through the ditch.
Right.
Well, we had a friend, Mickey.
Okay.
Mickey the barber. He's a barber now. Okay. Well, he was born without legs below the knees.
Okay.
As a child, so he adapted. He knew how to use prosthetics better than most people knew how to walk. Well, if snake bites his feet, ain't no problem. So he lead the way. He'd be running through there like this. We see a snake, he'd take off running after it and step on it, and then we come up and stab it. He was fearless.
Yeah,
fearless.
But see that look how it transmitted to you guys, because fearlessness does that. Our scariest thing, it was exhilarating, it was scary, but it was kind of rough, is when a stray dog would come at you.
And I got bit. Right down the street from your house, I got bit. Right in the calf.
I'm telling you,
changed me.
They would because they'd always be out.
That's when I stopped running.
Whose dogs are these?
I know. There was always a dog on your street.
A dog,
always.
A chow, a pit.
And they always ran after your ass. So if you
if you outran it, you'd be like, yeah, I got past him. But if he got you,
that's what I learned. Just like you was talking earlier about your dreams and your visions, and a lot of what I feel like we all learn as men. You gotta face the darkness.
Yeah.
Think of every fear that you deal with as that pit bull chasing your ass, right? And you're on that bike, and you're running. And it's gaining on you. It's gaining on you.
You can't look forward.
And you ain't faster than him, okay? So if you keep your back turned to that joker, he's gonna bite you.
He's gonna get you,
right?
He's gonna get you. You gotta know where he's at.
Once I got bit, and I realized that dog, even when I was a kid, I can't outrun him. So he's gonna bite me, and he bit me. He bit my calf, left a hole in my calf. I was so upset about it because it was scary as shit.
Right.
Well, after that, he was up, whatever. I finally get the confidence to drive back down that road, and I intuitively I was like, I gotta face the darkness, right? I gotta confront it. And I had this idea. And people had told me before too, you don't run. And so I was like, all right, so if he's there or whatever, so he starts to, oh no. And so I attempted to start going, and then I was like, oh no, stopped. And I put the bike in front of me, and I stood like this. I was like, what?
Smart. There you go. That's right.
And the dog
face him.
And the dog's running full speed. He gets within reaching distance, and he stops. But what I realized is that he doesn't want to get hurt. So he wants to bite me and avoid all damage.
Right. So you're turned this way. That's right.
Right.
You don't want to fight.
So just me doing this, he's not going to get close enough to where I can hit him.
Right.
Because he's not dumb. He's not going to. If I was my back turned, he was going to bite.
Yeah,
me.
yeah, he can get
But
you.
if I'm facing him, he won't do it. He stops like
right.
there's an invisible force field right here, and he was just and eventually he got bored.
Yeah.
And he just kind
No
of
fun
he
anymore.
just walked
Right.
off.
It's fun when he's chasing you and you're running.
And then eventually
That's right.
when my fear settled,
Yeah.
because a predator only chases prey,
Come on.
but a prey looks like a prey, vibrates like a prey.
That's right.
It feels like a prey.
That's right.
So if you feel like a prey, you got to condition yourself to not necessarily be the predator, but be the thing the predator won't touch.
Yeah, at least you got to at least be on his level. You got he got to recognize he's
And
gonna
I'll
have to have
come
a
look
fight.
his ass in the eyes
Yeah.
too.
Well,
And if
you
you ain't
gotta look
willing
at
to
him.
look him in the eyes
Oh,
and stare
yeah.
that devil straight in his face,
Come on, man.
and until the fear goes away.
That's right.
Until the discomfort and the stuckness, right? And just stand there and breathe and just look at him. Look at him. Look at him, because he can't touch you when you're facing
What can
him.
he do?
He can only
That's right.
touch you when you lost focus
That's
on
right.
where he was.
That's right.
And then eventually you take away all his power and he
take it.
dissolves
That's right.
in the mist.
Because it was fear to begin with.
It was fake.
It's right. It never had power.
It never
You
even
gave
existed.
You gave him power.
Right here.
That's right. You got to stop giving those things power, because they're meant to come against you, but they're meant to fool your mind, and you give it power. So once you take that back and recognize that you are the one
That's right.
that's fighting from a place of victory, it can't mess with you. And then look, if we get into a fight, we get into a fight, but you're going to recognize you got into it somewhere.
But what's funny was, how come those dogs just disappeared all of a sudden?
Man, you see
I don't
that?
never see
and
that.
I ain't never
dog.
seen no pounds
But
either. Like they weren't doing their job. What's
it's
going
the
on?
symbol of
Yeah,
the dog.
that's right.
Because they're still there. We just don't.
That's right.
When I feel like it, like spiritually, like I look at it when I'm walking, and the demons and darkness are all
See what
around
you
me.
giving, boy. That's deep.
They don't mess with me,
That's
bro.
right. That's
They
right.
literally know.
That's right.
They take one glance and they're looking for prey.
That's right.
I'm impenetrable, bro.
Dark don't like the light.
No,
They don't like the light.
And what's
Yeah.
funny is they're always going to check you out, and they're going to see if you're available. But if you have that presence of mind and you know who you are,
That's right.
they will not approach you unless your back's turned.
That's good stuff, man. Yeah.
The shadow stays
That's
behind
right.
you.
That's right. They stay back because, and when you light them up, then you really expose them for what they are.
And they know they look, even in the spiritual world, it's still the principles of energy efficiency and kind of not necessarily thermodynamics, because it's deeper than that.
Right, right.
It's quantum, right?
Right. It's a little
It's
different in
deep.
our
Yeah,
physics,
it's
right.
not Newtonian. It's quantum.
Right.
It's deep, and we don't even understand it. We're just starting to think in ways that could possibly lead us to some decent
but a lot.
understanding.
But we're still like wandering in the darkness with that, man. You know, these guys get somewhere and they're like, "Oh, we thought it was this, but it's really this. It's dark matter. This is it." You know, and you get to a
Exactly.
point. Yeah, they don't fully understand, but I don't think it's meant to. It's like the Tower of Babel. We get to a point. If we get too close, it's gonna be confused. So we better be careful. And because we're so much. We so want to understand things that are so much beyond us that don't matter. What about the things that do matter?
Yeah.
When we forget about the
control
things
the
that do.
controllables.
Right. You know, the things that are right in front of you, that child that you're trying to bring up properly, but you're forgetting about because you're so focused on that job.
That's right.
You know, and that's what's important, because that's the blessing.
Right.
You know, what did God give you? What did man give you? You know, which one are you feeding? Which one are you really taking care of?
That's right.
You know, and I think we have to take care of the things God gave us. He blessed us with those
right.
things. You know,
That's right.
whatever man created and gave you is going to be something that decays eventually. Why is that so important? Because it makes you look good in front of other people? Because it feeds your ego? Because it makes you feel good, because, you recognize you didn't have, but when it decays, you got to get another one.
That's right.
You got to maintain. But this thing that grew,
It's efficient.
is there. It's efficient. Most of us, Lord forbid we ever have to lose a child, but most of us have our children our whole lifetime. If we're blessed enough to have that.
Yeah.
Now, some of us have to deal with that. And, that's tough. And I
Talk
can't
about
explain
fear.
why that happens, but
that's the only fear that I because in a sense, I could be on a plane and say, if it goes down, I've made peace.
Yeah.
Like I'm literally okay with it.
I've been there.
And
yeah.
when I need to go,
Right.
like I've done that a long time ago.
Yeah.
In a way, and to the extent where I almost assumed that's just who I was, and I'd conquered all fear.
Right.
Until I had a son and I got on a plane.
Man.
And then I started doing that same thing where I would think about what would happen and how this would be. The same, I don't know if everybody does it, but I feel like I always go through scenarios. I'll be in church, think about a mass shooting scenario all the time. It's because I want to think about what I'm going to do.
It's not just me, like think about where the exits,
and what action am I going to take?
That's right.
Because I'm going after them, but I got to figure out how to get to them.
How? Yeah, and that's right. And I'm not bringing my gun, and it's over there.
You got to wait for the reload.
You
got to timing's got to be perfect.
And then do they have enough people where it's just going to be one, or is it going to be multiples?
That's
are they going
right.
to have all the exits? Are they going to be professional? So maybe that's the enemy that's trying to draw us away from what the pastor's talking about.
I think it's our nature.
But is it our nature protective?
Well,
right.
It's because your body and your brain, they only care about your survival in this place. And a lot of what the health disparities are your body reacting to a threat that doesn't exist.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And you think about the way we think about threats, in the idea of is it real or is it not?
Right.
And then even people if you notice the people that are really braggadocious about their insights and intuition and spiritual connections, and the ones that tell you about them versus you seeing them, it's always from a place of it's definitely not from a spiritual place. It's from a place of
who does it glorify?
Exactly.
Who's it glorify?
Exactly.
Yeah,
which
self-glorification.
it's kind of like it's contradictory into
That's
itself.
Right. No, it is.
It's like a person saying, "I'm the most humble person you've ever met."
I mean, come on, say, come on, right? As we all try to learn humility, but to say that is kind of like, okay. I mean, I guess, but of course, seeing is believing. Show, right? Because the mouth says all those things. But I think there's a thin line between preparedness and actually fear. Right, and we have to figure out which side of the line we're on, and then not to give it too much thought. Right,
mentality. That's where it touches me.
Yeah.
It's like you have to contemplate. Like it's the hero. Well, it's the warrior's death. It's a samurai thing, and you think about a lot of their stuff came from their deep connection and intuition to God. It's just part of their culture. It's what their culture wasn't as twisted to make money like ours is, right?
Yeah, you see that. Yeah,
right. But the idea is that you visualize the most gruesome death first. You start there. So give yourself space from the battle. This is what you want to do at the beginning of camp, right? You want to really sit with all the negativity, and just in the same way of staring the devil in his eyes. So all this, when are you going to struggle with that? Alone in a meditation, and there's no distractions, nothing, just you and that thought and those emotions. And if you can go ahead and fight your fight now, and with you, and then all the thoughts and emotions of the worst thing, you dying, you getting maimed, you getting disabled, you getting gruesomely, like everything getting chopped off you, whatever, like the most horrible thing you can imagine. And then really sit in that and imagine it and live that for a second. And then guess what? The reality is that it's going to be far. Even if you die, it's not going to be that bad.
Right.
So in a sense, you're dealing with the worst case scenario, and also in a way where now you've kind of almost indulged enough to let it go. Yeah. And then now everything you can do from this point forward, you've truly dealt with this crap. It's because ultimately, if you don't, here's what happens: you're surrounded by people that are building your confidence instead of building your reality, right? So I'm more concerned with how you feel in this moment than I am about how you're going to feel when you step into the cage in in the fight.
In the fight, right? As
And
far as what
everything needs to be focused on getting you to a position where you can walk into that cage with full freedom and mindlessness.
right, because you can't let it prevent you from going there doing what you know you can do.
Can't think.
And that's the thing. Yeah, and you should, because you shouldn't be, because you'll overthink.
But if you don't think here, guess when you're going to think.
Right. That
And
makes
then when you
sense.
watch
That's
people
right.
collapse mentally and they don't live up to their full potential in fights,
right.
I truly believe it's because they didn't do this part here.
That mind game.
And because they avoided it. Some of them won't even watch their opponent. They don't even want to talk about them. And talking about them, you can almost see their skin start crawling. But you got to deal with that.
deal.
And
No,
if
you
you
gotta
don't, then guess what happens? You're going to be paralyzed
Facing
in
on that
thought,
night.
and all those fears are going to rise themselves
Yeah.
up right here in the
Yeah.
moment that you need them to stay away.
The moment where you need to be fully in the moment. Now you're over
Yeah.
here thinking about what can happen because you didn't have that.
'Cause
No,
pressure
that's right.
cracks.
No, it does. Yeah,
Pressure, and guess
you have
what?
to know
This
what to
is
answer.
pressure. The fight is pressure.
That is it. Well, that's the epitome of it.
It is
but
pressure.
But it's what you're going to make it now because you know what you're capable of. You've been training for this for how
right.
long?
And this is low pressure out here, right? So wouldn't it make sense to bring fire to the water and then bring water to the fire?
Balance.
So when you step in the fight, you don't need. Why would you motivate yourself with pressure?
Right.
Saying and you see all these people in fighting's taught me that because in football they motivate you with pressure, and I kind of like it, because you can use a little adrenaline.
It brings it out. Yeah, it's
You
like,
can-
come on,
'cause
let's
it's
go.
8
Let's
seconds.
get it. Right.
You got 8 seconds to go up full speed, and you get to rest.
Right.
In a fight, you going for 5-minute rounds,
Hey,
bro.
yeah.
And then you do that 3 times.
Come on now.
So if you use emotion, you're dead. Unless you finish it in the first minute. But are you willing to put your cards in that?
Yeah, and because if it doesn't happen, that's what
dead.
happened to Tyson. Tyson was
dead.
finishing so many people that he got used to that. And when he had to go to distance, it was tough. So I can see how that goes.
And
but
it starts with what they allow in here.
yeah.
Because every fighter is thinking, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. I'm going to win.
Right.
So to truly win a fight at a high level and pro levels where you have it, you become where the physical body and the mind start to match, and they're so dead even that there's no way to discriminate. The only difference is their spirit. And so the fraction of percent that creates them winning and them losing is this deeper thing. It's something they found and were willing to do spiritually that this other person wasn't willing to do. Right.
Yeah, I can see. And then the thing is transmit that to the fights of life.
Yeah.
Right. You want to win every time, but even if you lose sometimes, you have to be able to gain some knowledge from that situation.
Because
And
the
have to
best
be willing
fight,
to face it.
the best fight is when they turn their brain totally off and they don't. And
Just go.
they'll all tell you if the mindlessness is the nirvana state of that. It's like the warrior always seeks mindlessness in flow, but that's pure intuition. So that means you got to turn
No, but
all your intellect off.
But that's so real, even in basketball. Basketball, you
Yeah,
don't get on
every
there and think
sport.
what I'm going to do. Yeah, football,
Yeah.
you don't think what I'm going to do. You're
Yeah.
going to think, I'm going to see what's open, and I'm going to take what's open. I'm not. I'm going to go here and take this shot and do this late. No, I'm going to see what he gives
You got
me.
to see what your eyes
Yeah.
tell you and let your body
That's
do
right.
what it knows how to do.
That's right. You've been training for it.
That's right.
You know how to react, right?
right.
And the best folks can react on a dime depending on the situation. You got to be able to do that. I mean, you can
right.
kind of blanket sport in that, even with some other situations in life. What are you giving me? Because I got to figure out what I can have here. And then sometimes maybe I'm not getting as much as I want, but that's okay. I'll take the little bit that I can
That's
get.
right.
So a little bit at a time, and you fight that fight. But the last thing you can have is fear. You got to face it.
Right. You got to deal with it.
Got to.
Think of it like this: fear, pain, and then there's discomfort, right? So you could equate fear can be either pain or discomfort, one or the other. It's a spectrum.
But what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of being pain? Are you afraid of being discomfort? Are you afraid of embarrassment? What does the fear reside in?
Right.
Because once you get comfortable being uncomfortable don't hurt you no more.
Exactly.
Pain can't get you no more.
And so that's the whole deal is like pain and fear, you deal with them one way only. There's only one way to deal with it is you have to confront it.
right.
So the nature of confrontation is like in everything we're really talking about, like So you start with thinking of fear and pain as information. It's neutral. It doesn't have an emotion, right? So you just think of it as like it's a, or any of your emotions. Let's just say you could step back just enough to say, I'm feeling this, but it's just information.
Right.
So the pain I feel right now is information. The fear I feel right now, it's just information. It doesn't really have a bias. I'm applying bias to it.
Right.
I'm giving it a color and a name and a label.
Giving it more power than what it actually, like how much does it really affect me? Only as much as I allow it to.
And I'm giving it a story.
Yep.
And I'm telling you where it's coming from. And some people can tell you a perfect psychologist definition of their trauma and their pain and their fear, right?
That's right.
But what actually changes you, science shows you, is the actions and behaviors in the internalized experience that you have and you have and you have and everybody has.
Right.
So the story I'm telling you, or even your story that you're telling me, it's not nearly as significant as the actions that we take to change the story and to create a reality where the story, in a sense, the future story is being told, and I don't have to tell it. I just got to focus on living my life a certain way and doing certain things. And sometimes it does mean developing disciplines that seem like outrageous. Right. There's no way I can do that. You're telling, no, I'm not the person that can wake up at that time, or I'm not the person that can not hit the snooze button.
Yeah, but once you tell yourself that, you start to
story.
believe it.
It's a story.
Yeah.
It's
So
just a
you
story.
just sometimes you got to leave it blank and say, "Hey, let me try it,"
Or lie to yourself. Start like that.
There you go. Hey, I can totally kill it.
Start
But
with
see,
it.
I think some folks, when they do that, they feel shame or disappointment when they don't do it.
I'll tell you what.
You know,
if you look, and the only reason because I would say I used to have that view until I learned that studies show all intelligent children, the first sign of their intelligence is deception and lying, right? That's all children.
Yeah, because you feel like, hey, I got this. I got you. But
and
you
it's
don't know
showing you they're smart.
Yeah, but you don't know they don't know what they're walking into a lot of times
Right.
either.
Because they
You know?
realize, oh, I can tell a story that's different than the story of reality.
Right.
And then people can believe it. And so it's like a power. You get it's your first power, maybe. Right?
Until they pull your card, and you got to prove
exactly.
it.
And your ass got to pay for it. That's right.
You go pay for it.
That's right.
Because we don't think through it as children. It's never been done. It's like our first time. It's crazy. You know, you're
stuff
here
works
for 40
sometimes. You're
years.
like,
yeah, hold on, it's working until they pull my card. But if I've been here for 10 years, it's different than being here for 40 years because now we've had so much experience and we're like, I don't know, that was traumatic last time.
That's right.
I don't know if I want to try that again. You know, versus, hey, let me step out of there because every time might give me a different result.
That's right.
Right? But as children, we're just like, hey, we're going to just do this. I'm not even thinking twice about it until you're like falling down on the bike after going 20 miles an hour on that hill and you're like, oh, this is a bad idea.
That's right.
And what is the injury, right?
And
then later on, you're thinking about the injury
right.
and not the hill. You know, because we want to tackle that hill.
Yeah.
But do we do it on a skateboard, on a bike, or on skates?
Cause and effect.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. You know? So the reality, perception's reality, but then what's your perception based on past experiences or based on your ability to kind of look at something and be like, hey, I can do this. But but a lot of times, like as we get older, it's that mental block. It may not be a physical hill.
Sure.
It's that mental hill.
Is. And you have to
can
create
I do it?
Well, that's the whole point. It's not necessarily, you're not lying to yourself. You're not deceiving yourself. It's that those are labels we put on it. You have to create a story about and manifest a future story that doesn't exist yet.
Right.
That's what everything that's manifested is. It starts off as a story. And most of the time, God, if you pay attention and people can be in proper alignment with themselves, because people are either super harsh and mean to themselves, and normally it's because the people that conditioned them were
You're
that
so
way.
right about that. Yeah.
Or people are outrageously optimistic, and I was a little rainbows and gumdrops, man. Little foo-foo in the clouds,
what's wrong with
and
that?
there's no stops or limits. And there is nothing wrong with that. Trust me, I know, because I
you're willing
started.
to step out.
Yeah, I started as the consummate optimist, but I also in empath. But I've also been destroyed, bro.
Yeah, you gotta be careful as an empath because it will you'll take everybody's
I didn't know I was
pain
on
and-
one end of a spectrum. I
Right.
thought I was in.
Right.
I thought I was. You don't know.
Yeah,
But then until you meet people that know how to exploit and drain the life out of you, And and you attract that too.
Yeah,
because that's the nature.
They're looking to dump on somebody, and they know they can dump on you because you're not pushing out, you're taking it all in. Unfortunately, like what you were saying, sometimes we're more negative with ourselves than we'll allow anybody else around to be.
Right.
But then we start believing that we're something that's not beautiful. I think it's somewhere in between. It depends on the situation. Once again, kind of like with the fighter thing, it's not thinking about I'm gonna do this. It's what am I going to be in response to what is necessary in this situation?
Right.
And so I think sometimes you have to be that empath. You have to be that bubbly person. And sometimes you got to be like, hold on, let's be realistic because I don't want to overemphasize this situation and then turn around and it's not what's necessary in this potential situation.
And the reality is the middle line, right?
Right.
The optimism's over here, the pessimism's over here. And the nature of most people that struggle as optimists is that they're attracting narcissistic, pessimistic people like flies.
Right.
Because it's the nature of reality. Opposites attract. It's just how things work, right? But also...
because they want somebody to speak positive into their situation when all they're thinking is negative.
And they need light. They need energy because it's dark over here.
That's right.
You
That's
know?
right. But that's why you have to be linked to something greater than yourself. Why God is putting that light in you, and you can push that into that situation. And then sometimes, look, you gotta recognize too. You model after Jesus. When Jesus talked to the people, he talked to them, but then he went up on the mountain and he got with God himself.
That's right.
Alone. He wasn't always right. He wasn't even with the disciples. He wasn't.
He told us how to do it.
He taught us. It's like you got to watch it.
Go be alone for a bit.
That's right.
Don't
go
trust
recharge.
on your own understanding.
Come on now. Go recharge. Let's work out that situation, and then we'll come back to it when we have the energy and we're kind of feeling a little bit better about whatever, because it is draining.
That's right.
Dealing with those negative emotions all the time, whether it's yourself or somebody else, being that empath or just kind of putting out too much, sometimes will drain you, and you got to recharge your batteries, dude. If you don't do that, then you're kind of walking around like, can I give more? Can I give more? And then you can't. There's no more to give. It's like it's a cup of energy. How much do you have left?
That's right.
And then things start to hurt more. When your cup is low and you're not recharging with sleep and food and you're trying to give what you don't have, everything hurts more. You're looking at things manic.
Even if you got sleep and food, but you're not recharging yourself with, and people got to be clear, like church is 2 or more.
That's right.
So that means that like church ain't just on Sunday.
That's right.
It's your life. And just like physical health, it's got to be lifestyle.
That's right.
You got to get fed by your exercise. It can't be like, oh man, I got to get this in. You should be like, I can't wait.
That's right.
I can't wait to go play pickleball. I can't wait to go hang out with my friends and play ultimate frisbee. I can't wait to...
and all that's physical, because what you're about to say with the spiritual is more important.
That's right.
You're right, because once you
How
charge
you
a
get
bit,
fed.
that's right. It goes back to that original story. All those things, my physical, my mental, my emotional is down, but my spiritual built all that back
That's right.
up. So your spiritual has the power to build you all the way back up, no matter where you're not. That's why fasting works, because it's fasting with prayer. It's not just fasting. It's not starving. It's fasting with prayer, and then God does something miraculous and kind of superhuman in you, and all of a sudden you have more energy than you had when you were eating. You feel better than you were. You're thinking clear, like, what's going on?
And not only that, if you do it in your fasting with other people, it's so much easier.
Oh man, yeah,
When
absolutely.
You're not alone.
Well, but you're right, because you're all inspiring each other. Hey, I got a little bit of this left over, this whatever. Or I got or did you check this verse out? Or did you it's a little bit of
or
something.
Or even hearing other people in that state, when you hear other people talk about their suffering, you're like,
man.
I don't feel so bad.
Right?
And I actually
definitely, you feed each other.
And actually, I'm really genuinely concerned to hear it, because it's like, that almost confirms what I'm feeling.
That's right.
So it's like confirmation bias in a positive way.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely. But it's just trying to reaffirm, like, I feel like crap, you feel like crap. And then all of a sudden, we both feel better just talking about it.
It's not so bad. It's not so bad. And I'm going to tell you this, that fast at the beginning of the year, man, you fasting and you start... It's something about fasting and looking at the word, and it just starts popping out differently than it ever has before. Man, it speaks to a place of peace in your life. And I never knew that, because, I hadn't fasted like that. I need meat in every meal. So I'll fast from something like social media, or I'll fast from something that isn't that hard. But what I had to realize is if I'm not suffering, I'm not fasting.
You didn't know your true urges until you fasted.
Man, big
because
time.
you don't,
Big time.
Because how are you reacting to your hunger, which in a sense is an urge.
That's right.
Right.
How am I denying my flesh in all senses of my flesh, though? Because it's not just my hunger. What else does my flesh want?
Does your hunger drive your behavior from this point?
Right.
Do the actions you take from this point, are they every time you feel hungry, I have to
Am I hangry?
And that's all you can think about?
Why does it spark angry?
Now you're treating others poorly?
Come on. So if it's all about food, am I really good like I'm trying to be good? And I know my flesh is not good. I try the best that I can, but I know what I am. But if I have God in me driving me, he closes the gap, then I can starve off that hangry. I can still control my emotions when I'm hungry.
And have you hit that? And what's interesting too, when you live like this, I love this. This is because it is about embracing the discomfort to where it does feel good.
Right.
And then you realize, because you say like, I'm fasting and whatever. This is hard. It's not comfortable. And then you feel that moment where you're like, you have that first, like, I'm hungry. And then you feel somebody say something to you, and there's that thing inside of you that wants to say something smart aleck back to him.
I'm gonna tell you the good one too.
And you feel the attitude, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
So because normally
it's in there,
but thing is, it's like, okay, and I'm no better than that person that always is hangry and shows it and is a jerk about it, and is mean at the office. I control it
most times though,
but I know the feeling they're dealing with, and I can understand it.
Yeah, or when they're eating that food in front of you.
But I'm gonna take pride. I'm gonna take pride in being kind.
That's right.
Because right now I don't feel like being kind, but I'm gonna say like, I'm going to be kind.
Come on.
I'm choosing.
But see, that's what Paul talks about. You boast in your weakness.
That's right.
What you boast in is like, I can do this, I boast in the fact that I know I'm weak here.
The challenge is to say, like, I feel all the things that I understand those feelings. But the beauty in the calling is to be able to know you're not those feelings, and to say, so what dictates what the next thing is, like the action you take. So
that's right.
If I can just work on changing my mind frame and say like, yeah, I'm not comfortable, but I'm not dead.
That's right.
And you know what? I've done plenty of research on this. Technically, I can go days and maybe even weeks without food. And these feelings, even though as bad as they are, they're not going to kill me.
There you go.
As long as I stay hydrated, it's all temporary.
That's right. I can acknowledge it, but not act on it.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing is acknowledgement. Okay, I recognize what it is, and now I know what I need to deal with.
Yeah.
It's having a plan of how to kind of work on these things. Of course, we're never going to be perfect, but we can work on the things that make us more subservient to the flesh, because it can't have me. If I'm going to be subservient to the spirit, I cannot be subservient to the flesh. I have to learn how to be subservient to the spirit and deny the flesh, even when it doesn't feel good. But if I get used to being uncomfortable, big deal, it doesn't feel good, right? And
that's the cold plunge for me. Every time every morning when I get in there, I go through the same process. The only difference now, I don't waste any energy thinking about it.
Right.
So I've learned.
Every morning you're doing this cold plunge?
Every morning before we train.
How long?
3 minutes.
Okay.
1 to 3 minutes, depending on how.
Okay. And this is based on the studies you were telling me the other day.
Yeah, it's all for the good. Hormonal levels, testosterone dramatically better. Post-workout recovery is dramatically better. Post-workout soreness dramatically better.
So you feel great. You hit the punch. You work out. You're
getting natural pre-workout. It's adrenaline, norepinephrine. Yeah, it's all the stuff that you want pre-workout. Pre-workout, right?
That's amazing.
It's all the good stuff, all the pre-workout stuff. But it's all naturally induced, and you're inducing thermogenesis, right? And so it's really keyed in pure intentions. The thermogenesis is really the big key, because if you stimulate and spark thermogenesis internally, your body's literally warming itself up from the inside out.
Right, but you're vasoconstricting. So you're closing everything on that cold punching, and when you get back out and start working, you're vasodilating.
Exactly. You get a rebound. You get a rebound vasodilation.
There you go.
So just like if I put a tourniquet around my hand,
and then when you let it go,
eventually it's going to be white.
Right.
And then when I let it go, it's going to turn bright pink.
Quick.
Bright pink.
Right.
Yeah, quickly. Right.
Right.
So you get this rebound, extra inflow, and that's why blood flow restriction and all these different things work so well. Anytime you restrict the body of oxygen, it's assuming it's in a low oxygen environment. Therefore, it needs to adapt in some way. So I either need to get more oxygen molecules to this area, or I need to get more blood flow pressure to that area.
Right. And if your body's working properly, it's going to balance that out automatically.
100%. It naturally is governing and dealing with all this stuff, just like inflammation. When I blow out my chest, my specific chest is sending out signals and markers that go back centrally into the brainstem, into the midbrain and nervous system. It go ahead and sort out what proportion of what stem cells and different things need to be created for this purpose to regenerate this tissue. So if you're doing cold post-exercise, you're putting a blockade in the middle of the interstate on this information exchange that needs to happen in the critical 4 hours post stress, physical stress.
Right. So how does that affect you different? Like, so I see pre-workout, but if you're doing that post, you're really getting.
You're reducing
you're
you're actually harming yourself.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. You can't heal like you need to.
You've quailed the first step of the healing, and you've messed up the directions, right? So the inflammatory response in acute phase is healthy and normal. It's supposed to resolve itself within about 48 hours, 72 hours if it's really heavy. That's generally natural. That's what we're supposed to be. Right. So we're supposed to stress ourselves to grow to a point we've created an inflammatory response that our body can adapt to and recover from within 48, 72 hours. Or for that matter, let's just say the knee and the stress it's under on a day-to-day basis, and then the stability that it has to deal with that stress that it's under. And so once you hit a point where the recovery cycle of sleep isn't completely resolving the inflammatory response from the day's stress, and now I'm carrying some of that over to the next day and to the next day. And now what happens is instead of that acute inflammatory process resolving itself, adapting, and then kind of moving on with life, and now you have a healthy, balanced joint, instead you're starting to develop this pressurized joint that actually, and now the autonomic nervous system starts to govern the instability with tone, with tone.
More likely to have injury.
It's trying to splint off this instability by putting a splint through muscle tone,
the muscle tone, right? Gotcha.
Which is governed centrally and then basically and peripherally, but it's autonomic tension that is there until you do something about it, right? And it's a muscle spasm. It's the thing that makes us hyper aware and sensitive of our pain spot,
right?
And then what happens is the underlying instability was first. It was the thing that existed first that we were ignoring. And then over time, just the normal stress of whatever our life is or whatever we're putting ourselves through, our body isn't quite prepared to meet that demand.
Right.
And so to the extent I keep applying that stress, though, without creating an adaptation for my body to tolerate that stress, and I'm pushing it down the train because, it's sore and achy at the end of the day and it gets swollen. But when I go to sleep, it's less swollen when I wake up in the morning. And normally after I take a few steps, it feels better. Or after I get moving and warmed up, it feels better. But at the end of the day, I can't hardly walk and it's swollen and tight. That's every story I've ever heard from the beginning of time. But what I'm saying is, well, why didn't you respond to the information of the discomfort that was clear and abundant 6 weeks ago, and now you're almost disabled, your quads atrophied to a third of the size, and you're walking with a clear limp that's now causing that low back and SI joint pain.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? It's not, the pattern's over and over. It's never a different story. It's always the same story. So
what's the solution? So what do you do differently when you have that situation?
So now we're a direct access physical therapy company. No orders needed. We can apply all the things that we do without anybody's permission. People can walk in the door and get treated. It's great. It's amazing. It's just been that way since July of this last year.
Really? Okay.
But my whole model was built in preparation for this day.
I got you. So
right?
you knew it was coming.
Oh, yeah.
I got you.
And this is what I was gearing up for, to be ready to be that, to be a primary health provider in a sense, as a first point of contact. That's the way the system should be. We have the most access to evaluate a physical problem, to assess it, to learn about it, to understand it, to compare it to norms, to compare it to standards of care, to see deeper things beyond that in terms of looking at the person's physical demands, determining if their body has is prepared, and if it's not, where is it not prepared physically to do what they need to do? And now you can get into
People are hard headed where they're going to try to push it to get to that point anyway.
They're going to wait till it breaks, and they're going to say, "Well, you know what? I used to run 3 miles a day," and then, "Oh yeah, when was that?" I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago.
Right, years ago, right.
The problem is that we all live in a state of delusion, and we all create a story about our life and reality, and we're confirming, most of us are confirming our bias. That's what we're doing. We're working hard to confirm our bias, and we're in to confirm the story. So we're not even listening.
But it makes us feel good about ourselves. It's like
Yes,
you said, it's
in
like
the
that
moment.
positive, that positive mentality, like, oh yeah, I can do this, and then when your body says you can't do it, where you at?
Right.
You know, and so that's the acceptance.
And how much damage have you done? And now how much work are you going to have to do to undo it?
And are you willing to do the work? Because do you understand what it takes to get back to where you were? And I mean, that's just not just the physical. There's mental things in that. There's spiritual things in that. There's a lot.
And that's where I'm getting.
Yeah.
That's where I'm getting.
Yeah.
It's not at all physical. Everything I just talked about is a psychological, mental problem. It's a mindset problem. It's me looking at information and ignoring it.
That's right. That's right. I mean, because you want it to be the way you want it to be, you don't want to stop what you're doing.
No, I want to do what I want to do.
That's right.
But guess what? Your knee is talking to you. It's telling you. Right. But guess what its language is?
Yeah, pain. Soreness, tightness.
It's sensation.
Right.
So your body only, that is, whenever we're talking about the body, and I think a lot of people really think about, like, they can imagine. So yeah, like a lot of people, they play. They're a good man. They're a great sniper on Call of Duty, and then you put a real rifle in their hands. They assume with 100% certainty that they're going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And my cousin was one of them. And guess what? I was like, all right. Well, I was going to give him a tutorial, but he was like, "Oh man, I'm the best sniper on this game."
Right.
And I mean, he was just like, "Give me that thing, whatever." Dude, he shot it, and I could tell when he shot it, he was going to get messed up.
He was shooting wrong because his shoulder was.
He put the stock below his armpit, and he was leaning forward, which means the scope's going to come back.
Right.
And then he had his eye right on that scope.
My goodness,
I was like, and I've seen many people do it, but most of the time I would say, like, no, let's stop or whatever. He was being so cocky and arrogant and wouldn't listen to me. And so I was like, at some point, instead of throwing the pearls at the swine, I was like, all right.
If you know, then the best teacher, man. You let them learn, right?
Right.
Dang.
And so but I did do him a solid. I didn't get into it too much because every time I'd give him a tip, it was just like he'd just get more aggravated. So finally, I was like, all right, but let me make sure this, and I put it on safety because I wanted him to see how much he was going to flinch. So he goes.
Oh no,
bro! His eyes closed. I filmed it too, just so he couldn't like. And dude, it was so ugly. Like he was like this.
He was waiting to get hit.
Eyes was closed, and then he goes boom as hard as he could. I was like, bro, did you see what you just did? You felt what you just did? He was like, oh my god. He was like anticipating the shot. He was he's like, why'd you do that? And I go, so you could feel what you just felt.
Exactly.
Right. And so anyway, he shoots and he misses everything, and in the scope. Hit him in the head and everything, and now he's like kind of like humbled.
Different respect.
What's going on?
Sometimes we have to be humble.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's necessary to be humbled by life.
Yeah.
You know, if you keep going that route, you go head first, and at least, like you said earlier, we grew up in there and we had the freedoms to get that stuff out then. Right? But what if we get that stuff out when it really matters?
That's right.
It's a problem. So he got to do it then, but what if he's in a situation where he has to use that thing properly?
Well, guess what happened on our way back? Because we went and looked at the target so I could prove to him that he totally missed the whole thing. Like, he's like, well, let's walk up there. I think I might have nicked it.
Okay.
No, you missed it. And so he saw he missed it. Now he's got this shiner. And now guess what? He said, all right, I'm ready to listen.
There you go.
He shut up, and I explained to him from the time we got to the sign to the time we got back. I said, this is what's going on.
Right.
And then walked him through it, got him set up. He never balked. He was ready and receptive. He was listening.
Yeah.
He hit the freaking bullseye the second shot.
But see, look at that. But look at that enforcement and what it creates, though. I mean, but that's beautiful. But so sometimes, and I know we look at it like we always have to get it right the first time, but sometimes it's necessary to fail humble ourselves.
You know what sucks about shooting too? You can't anticipate the shot. You have to be a great marksman. The shot has to scare you.
Right.
Like you got to squeeze so slow, and the thing is, the crosshairs are like, it's like your bullseye's right here, and the crosshairs are just like floating like this. So every time it crosses, you want to just pull it, but you can't. You just got to trust. And just kind of float around that spot, and then
hold that breath a little bit.
And when the shot goes off, it kind of makes your heart stop a little bit every time. If you did it right, and if that happened, you probably hit the bullseye.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I found shooting a 22 is a little different.
Oh,
I can control that.
recoil.
It's like no big deal. But when you're shooting that that big boy, you know, those 5.56s or something like an AR, you know,
I got a little bitty 387 or 357. It's a little bitty pistol, and it bugs, man. You could barely hold on to the thing.
You gotta watch those.
It's scary. It's like this long.
Yeah,
I'm like, this is
but
dangerous.
even I mean, the rifle feels good, but you gotta have it under control. You can't let it control because you gotta have that thing locked in. So I know what you're saying.
That's right.
But it's good sometimes to get humbled.
Yeah.
You know, some of us don't like it. We don't
well,
look good. But
it ain't
at least
good.
he was able
It's
to swallow.
necessary.
That's right. No, you're absolutely right.
And the only difference is now we allow it in, right? Or at least I know you do. I'm assuming.
That's right. Well,
but I know you
to.
do.
You have to.
Because it's like, because you know that's life. And if you don't let it happen and you feel almost like you feel triggered.
Come on, man. How many times does God humble you in a day?
Your triggers are the answer to everything.
Because those are the things that you're most sensitized to.
Yeah.
So because you're sensitized to that, you want to fly off the long edge on this thing, and realistically, you have to kind of hold it together and kind of recapitulate. How do I really deal with this?
And it ain't
I'm
about
feeling
them.
wrong.
It's actually about me.
Right.
That's a hard pill to swallow.
That's right.
But also when somebody hurts you, it's also now it's your pain.
That's right.
It's not their pain, even though they hurt you.
And they may not even know they hurt you. You know, because it's how you swallow it and what it feels like to you. They don't know what you feel.
But if you caused it, why is it my job to fix it?
You see that, and that's where because it's
and
yours, and that's the lack of like accepting the fact that I had.
Because you caused it, not me.
Right, but and the thing is you caused it, but did you even know you caused it? A lot of people will hurt you and don't even know they hurt you because it's really something that brings up something that you had a problem with, not them. They're completely comfortable with it.
But also, you're too sensitive. Well, no, you're just too sensitive. I'm just telling the truth.
Well,
isn't that
you
the
see
story?
That, yeah,
right?
that's how it goes.
It's always the same defense.
And doesn't that hurt more?
Exactly.
When they say that, because they don't recognize your story and why you feel that.
They're not
way.
empathizing with your pain.
No, and that's like what we talked about earlier: is looking at somebody's situation and trying to put it through a different lens, where you're looking at through their lens.
Right.
That's hard to do because you have to know that person. But sometimes it's not just their verbal cues; it's the visual things that you see. How are they responding to your information?
Right.
How are they responding to what you're doing? You know, and some people are different than others. But you think because that last person came in there, if I'm doing dental work on you and I see you kind of squirming, I recognize you're uncomfortable. Something's wrong. We got to stop and talk about this.
And is it your energy?
And I need to know that because that's right.
Most people automatically assume that's your problem. They're not thinking like, I'm stressed as hell. I got my kids' school late. Like I didn't barely get coffee this morning, and now I'm sitting here doing my job.
Right.
And I'm good at faking it, and I thought they didn't notice. Right?
You gotta recognize it.
Jim told me the other day. He said, "Man, I need to learn to fix my face." I said, Jim, it ain't about your face. I said, you got to fix your heart.
It's the action.
You got to fix the emotion.
That's right.
And you got to pay attention to it because the face is going to the body mirrors the mind and the mind mirrors the body. Man, it's a reflection.
It is. It's so, and look, I had a grown woman over here and a 5-year-old over here. The 5-year-old's acting like the woman. The woman's acting like the 5-year-old.
Hey, and chronological age does not determine emotional
matter. That's right. Because
age.
she is what we talked about earlier where she had an experience. So she's just like, hey, dive in. I'm good with whatever you're doing. Yeah. Right? She's over here, because of her previous situations, she's thinking it's going to be this, it's going to be this. When I'm done, you're done? Oh, that's it? What did you think it was going to be?
Yeah. What do you think I deal with?
What do you think? I can't believe it. Yeah.
Because you see the brand, I believe in dealing with, I believe the power of the human body. Mm-hmm. So the first step is always to deal with the inflammation process that's getting ignored. Right. So now we take
that's tough.
Take that chronically inflamed knee that this person now is adapted to and live with to the last moment to where now their wife's like, you're going to get this looked
That's
at.
right, yeah.
But guess who they're
Not because
first?
they want to do it, but because they're made to do it.
Right.
She's tired of seeing him limp, but he'll let it fall off.
And not only
right?
that, seeing his ass on the couch as soon as he gets home and all this stuff. But
Right.
also it's like, yeah, I have a real problem. But also like, yeah, well, you also need to deal with it.
Isn't that kind of like oxymoronic though? From what I see, it's like you're willing to walk around with a broken tooth that hurts you every day, and the amount of toughness that you develop with that, and you're afraid to go one day and deal for 10 minutes to get that thing taken care of, but you'll walk around for 2 weeks, 3 weeks with it killing you every day, and then take some antibiotics, wait for it to go away, then when it comes back hurting again. So you've done this over a span of months, some years.
It's
sometimes.
the same person that pushes
like,
the trash
serious?
down 25 times. It's the same person that lets the dishes build up in the sink.
I mean, come on.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, same thing. It is. It's not dealing with the situation.
It's procrastination.
Just do it. It is procrastination. And you know, procrastination is time arrogance.
That's right.
Thinking that you're going to have
We got time
to do it. But the thing is this, you know, like the Bible talks about, you know, today your life will be required of you. You know, so how can you say you'll do this tomorrow? You know, and if that is the situation, in your particular situation, why not do it today? If you can today, why not do it today? Because you don't know what tomorrow requires. You don't know how you're going to be hurting tomorrow. You don't know what's going to pop up that you didn't plan for.
Yes.
You don't know what life event is going to happen. It doesn't have to be death. But it can be death of a situation.
Yeah.
And then now that situation is compounded on another situation, and we call that stress. And I'm under so much stress. Well, could some of that have been kind of taken care of earlier?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that from perspective of like I got that all, because sometimes I do that. You know,
right.
so I recognize, and I'm trying to have less time.
And you ain't
arrogance in my
always got to
own
be
situation.
doing stuff. Like, but if you take care of the stuff when
The
it's
maintenance of what you have. That's
and then
right.
also really thinking about time management as a life endeavor, and it's something that we all can kind of take pride in as just a human. It's just like something that we know if we can do it better in any way,
Right.
it's going to improve our life.
Right.
Because we're going to utilize this precious time we have better and not be so arrogant about it. But it's also a skill. And
Right,
it's something that I have to put some energy into to learn and develop, and then I got to start practicing it.
That's the thing.
And when do I
The
practice
energy.
it? In class, or is there a teacher, or is there a seminar for that?
Yeah,
You're like,
man.
no, bro.
This is life stuff.
Here's where you
every
start.
day. Yeah.
I saw a post on Instagram that showed the most common thread for millionaires. The most common behavior that all millionaires share is that they make the highest percentage make their bed in the morning. And it said making your bed in the morning makes you consistently makes you like 400% more likely to become a millionaire if you do that consistently as a behavior. And I truly believe the small things are that's a controllable. All the small things are very controllable. That's the thing we leave hanging, right? What start with? For me, it sounds stupid and it's actually kind of gross, but brushing my teeth, right? Because I'm getting the kids ready, I'm making their lunch, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And then I'll find myself some days and I'll leave the house and I forgot to brush my teeth. And I'm like, that's because I'm not doing, like, it's not disciplined. It's not it should be so disciplined that it's like I'm brushing my teeth and I'm like, oh, I'm brushing my teeth.
But it's habit, you know. It's also something learned.
You have to
younger because
create
it's
it.
Also, that's right. It's a created habit, just like making your bed. So certain things it may do that, but see, other things have other consequences. So it may happen, and then you got a situation.
Right.
I don't know. I have a situation unless I've taken X-rays.
That's right.
So you don't know until it starts hurting. When it starts hurting, it's kind of beyond a little thing, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you recognize that, but I think like you're right from a perspective of just recognizing some of those habits and just like crossing the T's, because that's the thing about the blessing that is bestowed upon you in life. When you are someone that has something, you have to maintain that thing.
right.
It's not just about getting that thing. We all want things, but can you maintain it?
That's right.
Right? You want the jet, can you afford to put fuel in it? Every
That's
time
right.
you want to go, and can you pay the pilot, and can you do you really want that jet?
But also, if somebody's always behind you turning off the light or picking up your dirty clothes, do you ever even know or acknowledge that you left the light on, or that
that's the thing.
Or can I acknowledge that I'm a dirty person if somebody's always cleaning my tracks? Or and that actually was a part of my dilemma, is that my grandma did so much for me that I was I wasn't
see what
entitled.
you're
I'm sorry. I wasn't entitled. I
know
was
what you're
just
saying.
naive.
Yeah, you're used to somebody else doing it, so you don't recognize it's an issue. But then when you have to do it yourself, but see the difference.
And when I went to
is
college,
when
guess
you
what?
do it,
I had to.
Yeah. But did you
Yeah.
do it?
Yeah,
Because
I
you could be
figured it
that
out.
nasty roommate, right? But because there's some people that don't do it.
And what happened is sometimes it was little things, right? Like
Yeah.
I left one time. I left the dish in the sink. It was like a cup,
Right,
And me and my roommate got in this giant argument, and I'm like, "What the hell is your problem? It's just a cup, bro."
Right.
He goes, "It's you and 3 roommates." And in the moment, my pride was in, and I was like, and once you take your stand in something like that, and then you realize that they're right.
Yeah, it's hard to come back. But
Well,
takes
and I can
humility.
remember in this moment, because I was just already to the moment where I was defensive.
Right.
And now I was angry because it's like you're being stupid.
Right.
But then as soon as I thought about it from the perspective he gave me, when I thought about what he said, even though I was still emotional and angry, I acknowledged he was right. And so I was still arguing with him and trying to argue my case. At the same moment, I realized that he was right.
Right.
And then just kind of was like, all right, silence your bullshit for a second and just like let your emotions process. And it was like the first time actually it was one of the first times that I really learned to step back and away. And then but also realizing that I have to go to him, say, "Hey, I'm sorry, you were right."
That's the thing. I'm sorry, it can be powerful
And
sometimes.
then you also realize the quicker
Yeah.
I can get over this shit and deal with this, because inevitably I can ignore it and I can avoid that
Right,
conversation. And guess what? He's just a dude. Like he's probably gonna let you brush under the rug if you bring him
He's not tripping about it, but-
like a energy drink from the store or something. Like he'll be like, "Okay, I guess we're cool." again."
right.
And then you never talk about it, but all the while there's bitterness there.
Yeah.
And then there's also
And then that turns into resentment.
yeah.
So like you do that and you move beyond it. So why allow that to turn into resentment? Because
Yeah.
pride. See,
Yeah.
that's where you tackle your pride though.
Yeah.
See that's a whole different thing. A lot of men don't tackle their
being
pride.
wrong is actually a huge opportunity.
It's great.
In having the opportunity to say I'm sorry.
Yeah, say I'm sorry, but really saying it. Not
Yes.
just being like, oh, whatever, shut up.
Yeah.
But just being like, yeah, you know what, I'm sorry. I was wrong in
Yeah.
that situation. I have to recognize, I'll try to
Yeah.
be better, pay better attention.
Yeah.
Not just saying it, but realistically seeing it
Yeah.
and recognizing that in that moment, okay, because in the heat of the moment,
Yeah.
to change directions,
Yeah.
that's hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
But that's growth.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that as a testosterone
And as an adult, I can do that.
20-something year, yeah, but as a
Yeah.
20-something-year-old, that's hard,
It
man.
felt impossible.
It's like, yeah, it does.
It
because
feels impossible.
You don't even want to like acknowledge it at that time. You want to
No.
just be like, whatever. But when you can do that, that's growth, that's
That's
maturity, that's God working within you because you're recognizing, hey, I can be wrong sometimes. I'm not all knowing. Let that pride go. And
That's
when you
right.
start really letting go of things like those fleshly things like pride and arrogance,
It's freedom.
it's freedom.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Bitterness is
You gotta hold that.
Bitterness sucks.
Yeah, you
man.
gotta hold it. You're resentful, and he's resentful, but you're over here like, oh, he's being a butt, and I gotta walk by him and live with him, and you start complaining about him. He's complaining about you. You know, it all started from a cup.
And not
Is it worth
and
it?
that's the part people don't appreciate either. And I think your reputation and people discount, because your reputation does matter. Your word is really everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one thing I
Words
want.
are powerful.
Yes.
Very
And so even though it's not important, you don't want to ever operate based off what people think.
That's right.
And honestly, your reputation, like you said earlier, is really left for one judge, right?
That's right.
But the reality is that as far as your integrity, your core values, have standing for something, and even if you notice all the core values that really are admirable are all divine values, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's integrity, it's self-control,
Right.
it's
Like being truthful,
Yeah.
you know, just so honesty, you know, which goes in, they all relate to each other.
and truthful and integrity. If you think it's all wrapped in integrity,
That's right.
but integrity, as in it's like in a relentless pursuit for not truth, but for internal integrity.
That's right.
So that means like I'm even making sure everything I say to myself is absolutely true,
Right.
and it's not too harsh and it's not too nice, and I'm making sure I'm taking responsibility for re-raising
Hold yourself
myself.
accountable, right? Accountability, and we do it under God. So we do
Right.
it as God's elect to be in these places to do this, so we don't disrespect the position that He puts us in.
Right. But now that you have the proper father, because your earthly father was winging it. I'm gonna tell you, you know that now, right?
That's right.
Because you're winging it, right? I'm winging it. All parents are winging
That's
it.
We're all winging
That's the dirty
We're
secret.
That's the crazy.
That'll stop.
That's right. Hey,
We're gonna get
don't tell them too much.
There's gonna be they won't even need psychologists anymore after
Right.
people realize this, right?
You're
Your
right.
parents were literally winging it.
And they still are. And
It's
they're kind of
right.
okay because you're not on there like coattail feeling like, like,
And the ones-
what we eating tonight? Like,
and
I
the-
don't know. What you want to eat? Like,
Yeah, I don't get like
Hey, whatever.
I have trouble feeding myself.
Right,
much
I'm
less
not
you.
hungry. Are you hungry? Like, of course.
Everybody's always waiting for somebody else to
Like,
call.
what's going on?
Just so they can say,
Why
I
don't
don't feel
you
like
get
eating
in
that.
there? Yeah, you get in there and cook something. Like, what are you talking about,
Yeah.
right? Can we DoorDash? Wow, now you want to spend money? Like, you
Right.
can't go in there and you
Right.
get
You got
lazy. You got, what you doing? You got a job? Whose money you spending? Right? You know how that goes. That's right. But yeah, I mean, of course, life is that, and as we go, we know better, we do better, right? It sounds so cliche, but it's so real,
Yeah.
right? And so what happens when you know better, but you keep doing the same dumb stuff?
Psychotic.
Man, come on.
That's
It
what they
is.
call. That's the definition.
Now,
right?
yeah, well, that's the definition of doing the same thing and expecting different results.
Yeah.
Right. Come on now. So, yeah, the thing is you know it. So now you're doing better. And then you can't be wondering, why am I ending up in this place? I keep
right.
going in the same
You're
space,
choosing
but I'm
it
not doing
now.
You're choosing it.
Yeah.
That's right. I give you the first one, but the ones after that, like, come on now. We got to know.
Even at some point, you're choosing to be positive. You're choosing that because
That's
your nature in survival is negative.
That's right. Crossroads. Yeah, mine, it is, because if I have the food, but you're hungry with me, do I eat it all or do I share it with you?
That's
But
right.
if I share it with you, am I going to have enough to share with you?
And am I
when
being
was
nice to
thinking
you
about
because
that,
I want your food or because I like you?
what's going on here?
Do I- you know what I'm saying?
And
Like,
that's
it's-
where a lot of those shows test that. All that
Yeah.
Naked and Afraid and all
Yeah.
that. They're testing basics of are you just doing it because you want, or are you doing it because
Yeah.
truly inherently you want others to be well with you? But you have to recognize when you feed the others, right? 2 or more Christ is there, right? And then you share body because they maybe can do something you're not so good at, right? So you're all helping each other, right? But that's what we're designed to do,
right.
support each other.
That's right.
You
And
know?
I do think that if you're going to be an effective spiritual leader, you better be physically strong and mental fortitude out of this world.
Yeah.
And now you're in a place where there's sufficient balance, just like with the work, family, and God scenario. It's this trio. It's the same thing, same energy, same symbol, same balance is required. You have to put equal effort into each to make sure they're all maintained. And if one falls behind, your life still feels like it sucks.
Yeah.
Even if you have 2 that are like at 100% and one that's at 50%, you feel like life is horrible.
Well, I mean, and that goes back to the 99 and the 1 lost sheep.
Yeah.
I mean, you got all of these over here, they're in the right place, but when that one is out of place,
You can't sleep.
I mean, it's a problem, right? Why? Because that one is so important.
It matters.
Right? It matters. And if it matters to God, it matters to us.
And so whenever I wake up in the morning, I'm just going to hit that snooze button one time. Does it matter?
It matters.
It matters,
Because you
bro.
know what time you set your alarm for a reason, and you know you lost that time. You're going to be that much more. You
And it's
know
not
that.
even that. It's that you're allowing your very first action of the day to be a loss.
That's right.
You're
that's
literally
right.
saying, I'm going to take
Procrastination.
an L first.
That's right. I'm gonna go ahead and I need some more sleep. I'm feeling and you kind of
And you trying to win today?
You're rationalizing in a sleepy state where you're not even there because of course you're asleep. It feels and you can't go back to sleep because you're thinking the whole time. I got to get up in 10 minutes and I'm counting it down now. So what are you doing?
I'm going to play a 10-point basketball game with you, and I'm going to always give you the first point.
Come on.
Why would I do
Why would I
that?
do that? I play from behind.
I'm
I don't.
saying I want to lose.
Unless, am I not respecting you? Am I not respecting your game? And
That's
if
what
I'm
it
done
sounds
doing
like.
that, that's when you get humbled. So play around like that if you want. You can't play around like that.
You're playing.
So,
You're
that's
playing.
right.
That's the problem. That's what kids
right.
do.
That's right.
In the
That's
rite
right.
of
'Cause
passage.
those are games. This is life.
Exactly. And the rite of passage into manhood is choosing to do the man thing.
That's right.
And to understand the child that's in there has to be re-raised because
That's right.
your parents were winging it.
That's right.
And now you know your father and you know the rules and
There
you
you
know
go. There you
the
go.
game
There you
and
go.
you have all the information.
There you go.
And if you're doing the wrong thing, it's because you're choosing to not take responsibility that it's your job to fix you.
That's right.
Nobody else's.
Nobody
And that's what being a freaking man is.
Yeah.
That's what masculinity is all
Yeah.
about.
And it's okay to have like advisors. So,
yes, they're models, they're mirrors.
That's all it is. But that doesn't mean they always have all the truth.
No.
You recognize what works in your situation. And like you said, you know the rules. But before, maybe you didn't know all the rules. You kind of was playing like I can be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. When you recognize you're all in or nothing, it ain't no 1 foot in or 1 foot out. You're either this way or that way.
But you got to be a conscious choice.
That's right.
And it ain't based off your position in the hierarchy. Guess what? In fact, it's in opposition to that.
That's right.
Because they found that janitors that are deacons in their church are the happiest people you ever meet, and they feel purposeful and their life is full.
That's right.
And you could have a CEO that isn't involved at all in that, right? And maybe he's got a golf group where they go drink and talk about women and do business, and his life is like, it's like, well, what am I missing? What am I missing? What am I missing? Well, you're missing something outside of the material. You're missing something deeper, because when we talk about people, that's like the lowest level of our psychology, right? That's the stuff that's literally just based off of living in communities and making sure that the person that steals, we all know who they are, and that's where gossip comes from, because you got to know who those are, because they're threats to the whole community and our children.
That's right.
Right? It goes back thousands and thousands. We're built like this.
But it gets to a point where when do we stop talking and we actually take some kind of evasive action to help that individual? Because why are they doing it? Is it out of need, or is they just a straight klepto? Like, are they just straight doing it just because, or are they just, or is it because they need and that they don't see another way? So what about if that's an opportunity to help?
That's right.
You know, and I think that's, we can't misconstrue where the opportunities to help versus where we're looking at true pathology and these people have problems. And then which way do you deal with it? You got to have a plan. So that means you have to diagnose the situation before you're able to deal with the situation
100%.
Versus judging somebody for what they do without understanding their situation.
And also, and that's the warrior way too. And honestly, that's like if you were a Navy SEAL and you were going into battle, right? And what are you going to do? You're going to, all right, this is our enemy. This is where they live. This is what they look like. This is what they wear. This is what they eat. This is when they sleep. This is whenever they're awake. This is when they do this. This is when they do that. You're going to study them. You're going to understand them. You're going to look at their family dynamics. And the same people that you hate, what happens is it always happens. And if you listen to these guys and they'll talk about it, Jocko's one of them. In that process, you gain respect for them, because even the person that you walked into there saying, "Oh, these are horrible people. They kill people. They do this. They take prisoners. They blah 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 blah." Just like when the Indians used to take prisoners, and then the prisoners didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
The Westerners didn't want to leave.
You're saying something very powerful there. I was talking to a guy, doing some of these disability exams. Talking to a guy, he's watching. He's a guy he watches on a drone. He's watching these guys that are the enemy. Right, and he's watching them, and these guys, they're in this village, and they're the leaders of whatever rebel group they are, and they're supposedly our enemy. And he watches them for like 2 weeks. He watches them deal with their
play with their children,
and all that. And he starts to have respect for the guy. Well, 2 weeks up, hey, we're killing everybody. And he bombs everybody, and now he has nightmares about this stuff that causes him to grind his teeth every night. Why? Because he had the human component that bonded with them.
He saw himself in them.
That's exactly right.
And he
admired, had kids at home.
And he probably admired, said like, wow, he's spending more time with his kids than me.
That is it. That's exactly it. He's over there.
Is he a better dad than me?
Is he a better dad? Because he's doing all this. And I took him out. And I got to deal with that. And not just him, but also collateral damage. Everybody that was around him, because those bombs don't have, they're not.
There's a reason that we feel the way we do when humans kill other humans.
That's right.
Because we're not meant to.
Even if it's indirectly.
We're not meant to.
Because now warfare is different.
Because we are literally killing ourselves.
That's right.
We're a reflection of each other.
But you're just doing your job.
Right.
And so that it hurts. But what does it do to the human component of the human? That's not what we're designed for.
Because as well as the collective, we are one species. We were one thing.
That's
and
right.
and just like imagine a hive of bees where you got certain bees that are just out there just taking out a whole subsection of the bee colony,
right? Because
they believe something different.
That's right.
No.
That's right.
Their belief is protect the queen at all cost and protect the survival of our species, even if it means sacrifice my own life at any moment. And reality is that that's kind of what we're built for too. Right. And even when it comes to death in our time, it's not, death is for you. It's against the people you leave behind. You're free.
You are.
The burden
but,
is off.
But that's the last thing that God defeated. It's the
Right.
last thing Jesus defeated. So that's what actually does give you true freedom. So it's not just like, oh, death, you know, it all is just a now. That is the thing that he defeated so that we can be in a greater place after we get out
That's
of
right.
this place, which is full of trials.
And if you listen
Right.
to thousands of near-death testimonials, every single one of them that die and they go through the process of transcension, they meet Jesus, they feel the pure love and the constant of the universe, and the fact that it exists as love and as a frequency, and it embodies and resonates through them. They don't want to leave.
Right.
When they get told they got to go back, they're like, "What?
For
like,
what?
no."
Like, for what? They're not
They're like, you got more to do. You got more to learn. You got
That's
more to
right.
share.
That's
and
right. That's right.
and when they do it as a mission, and they're going usually back into like a broken, hurting body
That's
that's in a
right.
lot of pain.
That's right.
And so it's like they're good, but the only reason they go back and they have the will and desire and they live full lives beyond that is because they understand why they're here.
Yeah.
And it's not about them.
Yeah.
They understand that they're here to have influence
That's
and
right.
to exist as a reflection of God.
That's right, and they have an appreciation of life. I have a patient who told me about his. I mean, it was powerful. How he said he floated above himself, looked
Yeah.
at himself on the hospital bed, went down this tunnel, got to the light, felt just complete peace and rest, and he had been hurting. He was going through it. And he said, you know, they told him it's not your time yet, and he felt the shock, and immediately as he came back, he just felt immense pain coming back into that
yeah.
body,
They
right?
always
So
say
like
that.
just like what you said, he didn't
Yeah.
want to come back. He was like, "This is peace. This is I'm finally. This is amazing."
The only
right?
reason they're
Isn't
cool with it is because they understand it's not about them in a way.
That's right.
It's deeper, and
It is.
also they have peace knowing that they're going back.
That's right, right. Knowing that because everybody has this speculation: is it real? Is it real? That's where faith comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have that connection with God. It's real. It's there, but
Yeah.
you have to seek it, right? Because as you seek Him, He seeks you.
That's right.
Right. But if you're not seeking Him, then you're going to feel far away from Him.
That's right.
So the situation is that so many are just kind of seeking their own kind of fleshly desires or selfish ways. But then God sometimes will press on you even in your mess. I mean, that happens all the time. Because He recognizes whose you are.
You just
where
don't have
you
the
come
lens
from.
to see it.
That's right. But I mean, how many blinders are put up? How many false things are put up around us? How many idols are put up around us all the
looked at
time
it
that we
like-
must deny?
I kind of had this realization that I'm walking on a path paved in gold already. I've been walking on it, and I've been guided down it, but I was never looking at it for what it was. Because I was literally looking at the path paved in silver. I was looking at the path paved in bronze. I was looking at what's going on over here. I was looking so far out in front of
Right.
me.
We're so distracted.
I didn't even look down and see that I was already stepping over the goal.
But isn't that the perfect way to misguide humans?
Right.
Is make them think that everything out there that they can't
Is
get
what
is
they
what it
need.
is when they're exactly where they're
Where
supposed
they need
to
to be, man.
Already. And once you realize you are where you're supposed to be, that's when you have peace.
That's
but when
it.
you're always reaching for something that's somewhat unattainable, or if you
Yeah.
just do this for 10 years, you'll get this.
Right.
You do this for 5 years, you'll do this. Oh, you got to make sure you do this. You got to save this much. You're always looking for that next thing. What about that thing that you have right now that you don't have enough gratitude to just say thank you?
That's right.
I appreciate where you have me now. Because some of the people from our standards, right? Because in America, everything is based on money, but some of the people with dirt floors and little huts, they're the happiest people. Why? Because they get to experience the earth.
They're
just the way
living
it
their
is.
life. And they're appreciating each
They're
other.
not chasing anything.
Yeah.
Right? They're fed every day, they sleep every day, and they just have to do whatever little things they feel like they want to do. But they're happy. They're not stressed with those kind of situations, but it's just like that ultimate understanding of being, that we are blessed with life every day we wake up, and it's gratitude, like thank you God for another day. So give me that.
Let's wrap
Appreciate
it up
you.
on that.
Yes, sir.
I don't even want to try
Yes,
to top
sir.
that.
It's
I couldn't think of a better way to summarize.
That's good stuff,
Yeah,
brother.
man. We went like
3.5 hours.
Okay, I appreciate
Hey,
you. Good deal.
time disappears.
It
man.
does, man. You
Yeah.
get into a good conversation. I appreciate
It's a
you,
flow,
brother.
man.
Yeah, it is
and
a
it
flow.
exists between two people, and I appreciate you flowing with me.
I appreciate
yeah,
you
coming
flowing
on
with
the
me, brother.
podcast.
I appreciate you.
uh,
I appreciate you inviting me, brother. It's
yeah,
been a
yeah.
pleasure,
And
man.
we'll
Thank you,
definitely
God.
do it
Thank you,
again.
brother.
And for that, we're going to bid you adieu. And that's episode 10 of Interdimensional Gummy Bear Podcast. And we will see you next time.
Peace.